Hello and howdy, everyone. Welcome to our stream. We are so very excited to represent and to elevate some topics today on Global Accessibility Awareness Day. My name is Alyssa Nichol, and my co-host today is Catherine Grayson Nance. Hi, Catherine.
Hello.
Oh, I am so excited for our lineup today. It is a list of amazing guests who have just graced us with their presence. So very, very excited to get started. Do you have any opening comments before we bring on our first guest, though?
Ooh, I don't think anything special. Just this is one of my favorite streams that we do every year. So I'm excited to get into it. We have a seriously powerhouse lineup of guests.
I know. I'm very.
So I kind of don't want to stall any longer on the introduction. I want to just get into it. So
awesome. I am going to bring on our very first guests. I should say we have two today. We have Siddhant and Rohan. Hello, can you guys hear us?
Hello.
Yeah. Good to see
you guys so much.
Both. So I've prepared a quick introduction for each of our guests, but after I introduce you, please feel free to jump in, say a little bit about yourself for those in the community who might not have gotten the chance to meet you or see your work yet. But Siddhant Shah is the founder of Access for All, a national award-winning accessibility consultant focused on inclusive design in cultural heritage sites, events, and workplaces. And Rohan Mahtani is head of digital accessibility and partnerships at Access for All, leading inclusive design initiatives and DEI-focused L&D programs across global institutions. But can you both tell us a little bit about yourselves and do, I guess, a more detailed intro?
Sure. Thank you so much, first of all, for inviting us. And we are really excited that on the occasion of Global Accessibility Awareness Day, we are able to do this. And also, in some way, this is the true essence of what digital inclusion does. It bridges gaps and it goes beyond the physical borders. So I am a trained architect, and while I was in my architecture, my mother acquired visual impairment, and that propelled me to work in this space and look at how design affects our everyday life. So this started 10 years ago, and we've been doing this. This is our 10th year. We are looking at various different elements, right from physical spaces to digital spaces, and also looking at cultural sites, monuments, making museums accessible, places where they say, please do not touch, and how do we kind of break that barrier and make multi-sensory engagement. And I now hand over to Rohan, who heads our partnership.
Hello. Hi. So I am a designer by profession. So that's where the person first or the people first approach comes from. We build things for people to use it, but then we again indirectly limit a huge audience from actually going and interacting with those things, be it in physical world or the digital world. So what I focus on is bringing in the digital aspect on the basis of the principles which are there already existing. People are referring to it in the physical space. So yeah, I get in the design sense, the usability sense, as well as the digital accessibility sense in my work.
Amazing. You both have such unique roles, and it's for such a long time in the community. It's really an honor to have you on stream. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I was wondering, could you guys walk us through the story behind Access for All and what inspired its founding?
Sure. So as I briefly said, I was studying architecture, and my mother all of a sudden acquired a disability. And that was a turning point in my life, particularly to understand that how one disability can change the life of the entire family. And not only does it affect the person, but also brings in the social stigma. And also it in the geography, in the region like India, where the looks are such an important thing, like the way you look, the way you appear. And all those elements added to the challenges that we faced as a family together. And another major thing that happened was that we were traveling together, and we were very politely shooed out of an art gallery because the curator of that space thought that my mother would go close to the artwork, touch it, and that the person was really uncomfortable. And that became a major turn point in order to understand that one, India is the world capital for visual impairment, and second, touch is the medium through which that audience experiences things. And if they are made not to experience that, because touching something in an art gallery or a museum is not something that people would prefer, imagine that entire population is taken away from the rich cultural heritage that we have. So that became the point of interest. And I also got a chance to go and study in Greece, do my master's in this space of understanding how the forgotten stakeholders of culture, heritage, and tourism are looked into. And we started looking at different ways in which we can break those barriers. And while we were doing that, we realized that we are working around multiple illusions, that accessibility or universal design is only for a certain audiences. We don't understand like a simple thing like a principle of universal design that works for everyone. Like if there is a ramp or if there is a flight of staircase and it snows, which is the first thing that you clean off, you clear off the ramp, then everybody can enter the space. So how do we start looking at these understanding? And while we started working with the monuments and heritage sites, we started creating tactile artworks, that things that a person could touch and feel and experience. And in bold letters, it would be written, "Please touch," which also kind of broke the notional barrier of experiencing the space. So in these contexts, we started realizing how one works around the space of inclusion and access. And these things propelled us to go and work in the corporate space. Along with Rohan, we also started working in the space of digital accessibility. And that came in during COVID. At COVID, suddenly touch became a taboo. It became, and we were trying to figure out what would happen, what is the new trajectory that access for all would have to take, and in order to be more relevant in the time that was there. And that is where together we started working around digital accessibility, making websites more accessible, making digital interactions more accessible. And before I pass the baton to Rohan, I want to add this. At that point in time, I had one of our colleagues who is hearing impaired, and she said, because she prefers lip reading as an element of her communication. And she said that I love Zoom because everyone is facing me and I can see everyone's lips. I think that was such a powerful tool to understand that how digital accessibility works. And more, so that is where we transitioned, and the agency moved into the space of physical access, digital access, and also looking at this concept of shattering various different illusions that we came across about, and the myths that people had around disability access. Over to you, Rohan.
I think that is absolutely beautiful. I think your story and the way that it's weaved through the physical world and into the digital. But Rohan, I absolutely want to give you a chance to speak as well on that.
Yeah, I think when I joined in, the access was the center of work, and we got into another branch of the digital accessibility, wherein as a designer, again, usability is something which we consider throughout our product building journey. But does our personas include person with disability? Does the target groups which we are catering to include something which is beyond age, beyond demographics, beyond gender? That is how the ability of that person is to interact with any interface you are creating. A lot of work happened in the space, as Siddhant sir mentioned, during COVID, because the world went online. People were having discussions over different web interaction platforms, right? Like we are having currently. Imagine we are not having this captioning and nor a sign language interpreter. How would a person with hearing impairment be able to consume or enjoy the discussion we are having, right? It's not always about getting up to the standards which are set by the industry. It's also about that human touch that you bring in while you create digital experiences. So that's something we started exploring and getting into.
I have to ask, what are some of the biggest challenges you both faced when you were bridging this physical world and this digital world for accessibility?
So I have this thing called the D for digital and D for disability. It's the ABC to reach the D. And the A is awareness, to create that level of awareness that you don't have to, think of the additional cost and things that would incur, because every time we talk about digital accessibility, we are looking at a retrofitting into that space. Out of out of 10 websites, 7 are designed without any considerations for accessibility in its design phase. So how do you kind of start thinking about that? That A led to the second challenge, which was the B, which was B for budget, and where people would start thinking about, do we have to pay more, or like, why is it so expensive to retrofit our website? It is because there are certain elements of design, your color scheme, the contrast, various aspects that were not considered in order to make the website more accessible while it was being conceptualized. And the C comes from this idea of charity, and we realized that a lot of organizations were happy to do things around in a physical space, because they could put it through their CSR project, they could put it in a place where they had a physical accessibility project, has a tangible outcome where you can show, you can click a picture, put it up on your social media, send it out on your mass emailers. But when you change your things on a digital space, they are fine-tuned details. There are smaller things that are not very, very strongly visible, but a simple thing like a color contrast, or a simple thing like changing the font to a certain point size that would allow a person to read clearly. Now, how do you kind of showcase those elements? That became a challenge, and then we had to figure out ways for people to have that instant gratification of being able to also commit to that change digitally. So I think these were the 3 challenges, ABC, that leads to the digital accessibility part, and also the level of understanding of the content development, that digital accessibility is not only about a plugin that you put, but also the content matters, the way you curate your content, the less jargons that you use, inclusive the content gets. So even in the physical space, when we talk to the museums, we tell them that it is not only about putting a ramp or putting something that would allow a person to come inside, that you put a tactile pathway and the person is inside the museum. But if they are inside the museum and they don't have intellectual access to an artwork that is there, or to the object that is there, or they're seeing something where that object is there but there is no information about that, then it still does not make sense. It is only like a person is inside an accessible space but not actually grasping what the things are about. So an accessible website is great, but if the content is not accessible, then you kind of lose the battle there.
What do you think has been, trying to think of the right way to put it, right? One of the questions we get over and over is, how do we get buy-in, right? You've done a really good job articulating these challenges. And I think we all, at least I was definitely nodding along like, yup, been there, heard that. What has been the most effective approach that you found, especially in talking to like these museums or these websites or clients that you're working with? How have you found is most effective in educating them and helping them understand, no, this is worth the investment, this is worth the extra time, this is worth you reconsidering this content or rebuilding this? Because it is a big ask, and I think all of us agree that the payoff is worthwhile, but sometimes the folks we're talking to aren't quite there yet.
I'll be very honest, like, sometimes you just have to play on the FOMO effect over there. That that I've seen strangely work very well with the corporate space. If one corporate entity has picked it up, everybody wants to immediately start doing that. Because, and I also feel that is important, because that sets a precedence. It is that people are scared when the idea is in the conceptual phase. They are only happy to do it if they have seen an outcome somewhere where they have not done it, but somebody else has done that. And I think the first mover in the space, the mover shaker in the space, is actually entities who are risk takers, who are keen on exploring. And I think, like, if you are at it, like the question that you're asking, this was the same question we were asking almost around, like, say 7-8 years ago, where we were trying to figure out how do we reach out to the agencies. But then we also realized that rather than selling our service, that that, oh, we are providing you the service of accessibility, we started telling them about the impact it would have. And I think that really changed, that really got in a buy-in from the teams, like from the organizations. And we also would work with them in an itemized format so that they can decide, they can have quick wins and then get encouraged to do more.
I think just to add one more point to that, what I've seen in last few years is it's about making the first move, right? Like any corporate, if they do it once, we have seen them doing it again. So it's about that first attempt to do it, and then they willingly trying to do it, at least trying to do it in the next consecutive years.
And also, initially, I'm okay to talk about this. Like initially, when we would do an access audit, people would look at that, that, oh, you're only telling us the negative things. And then we also realized that, because every time we would do an audit, we would say, oh, this is non-compliant, this does not fit well with this particular guideline. Because that was also our approach, and we took cognizance of that, and we changed that, because we realized that rather than giving them a discouraging approach towards a report, or like even if we started giving them areas of improvement, so also creating a positive spin on this, which kind of encourages them to take it up, rather than because I also realized later when we would do this that say, for example, if I'm submitting that in a corporate space, they also had to take it to their boss, and it's never nice to show your boss that out of 10, like 8 things are non-compliant. So so instead of saying that, oh, these are 8 areas of improvement, then everybody has a buy. No, let's work towards that. So it's also the attitudinal change in approaching accessibility.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, no one wants to hear like you're completely off base. you're whiffing it. You need to tear everything out and start all over.
I don't know, man. This is news to me. I'm taking like life notes. I'm like, okay, don't stop dropping all the negative on people at once. Okay, this is good notes for everything, not just how do you push accessibility forward.
I'm also really encouraged by it. You said that like once people have done it once, once companies are kind of bought in the first time, then they start to see the benefits, and they're in from then on. That feels reassuring to me, that like, okay, this isn't something that people have to be sold on over and over and over again. If you can kind of get people on board and communicate the importance once, then they can really start to see the change for themselves, and it becomes a little bit more self-evident, hopefully.
I did have a question from earlier, because you have this phrase called shattering illusions. And I wanted to ask if you could unpack that and really talk about what illusions in detail that you found, or just what that phrase means to you both.
Sure. The reason why we use that phrase, because since this is our 10th year of being in the industry, and there was somebody who was writing an article on us, and the journalist, while she was asking us questions, she's like, Siddhant, every time you're answering my question, I feel that you are demystifying so many myths that we carry around there. You're shattering illusions. And I kind of just picked onto that 2 words, because sometimes you have to work like an artist. You have to step away from the artwork to see the artwork that you've created. And we realized that when we heard from her side, that actually we were doing that, but for us, we were like doing our job. And every time somebody would come to us with a certain preset mindset around accessibility, we had to rework that idea that this is not what you're saying is not completely true. We can work around that. There are different ways of making it more inclusive, making it more accessible. So these were the illusions that we were breaking. Like for example, when we did the Coldplay accessibility, when they showed in India, we were their on-ground accessibility partner, and we were constantly working with the Indian agencies over here, and we had to tell them that when you make something accessible, it is not only for a person with disability, but it is for everyone. when you create a ramp, or when you create access with a sign language interpreter, or if you have a riser, you are actually making it easier for somebody who has dwarfism, which is also one of the identified disability in the Indian RPWD Act, or you are actually making it accessible for senior citizens. Like, when you do something with an approach of universal design, so say for example with the flexibility of use, those elements are brought in, it makes it way more accessible for a wider reach of people than only one target audience. So I think these kind of illusions we are constantly breaking as in how we do new projects. I'll give you one more example. When we were working on the website, and the importance of content writing, we designed a website for a palace. I won't name, because otherwise it's a palace property in India, and one of the best monuments that are there, like in North India. And while we were doing the website, they were quite excited to make the website more accessible. And then while we were looking at that, we made sure that there's screen reader access, everything was available, all text on all images. And we made a test run with our team members. So we also have team members with visual impairment, who do our testing. While they were going through that, they're like, the screen reader works perfectly fine, but I'm not able to understand every time there is some new thing, or when you're describing the property of the palace, there is constantly this one line that comes in and says that, as you can see, as you move around, you will see that over there. And we realize that we are not making it accessible. So that was another myth that we had to break for ourselves, but also for the content writers, that your work also equally plays an important role when we talk about accessibility. So ever since then, we have been writing content in only descriptive format, or only in hierarchical or structural format, that kind of gives an understanding of what all elements would be added. And if you're able to give a certain kind of a scale, so if you're in a palace and the building is 3 times your height, it is given that it will be somewhere between 5 feet to 6 feet into 3 times that height. So, or as big as your palm, or like giving something that they have the contextual understanding to.
Just to add one more point to it, from the design and the digital accessibility end, is a lot of people thought that making a website accessible is compromising on the UI elements we have, right? So you make the font size a little larger than the usual font size. You increase the contrast of the icons you're using. But that is something which you need to do if you're considering accessibility after your website is designed and developed, right? So therein where we got in the concept of shifting leftwards. A lot of companies follow it, but they don't actually go and implement it. They just keep it on paper. Shifting leftwards is considering accessibility in your design, getting your designs verified for accessibility, adding HTML or code-based elements in the design file itself, where you get it reviewed on how that would be announced by a screen reader, right? So you get all those things fixed, verified, validated in your design file, which you are creating, and then hand it over to a developer, because then they know what and how to code that particular element, right? So again, the myths or the illusions are there, which can be shattered in a very simple logic-based move, and that's something we have been trying to do.
You're like, guys made me tear up a little bit with the as you can see, and these even these live examples on websites, because it's just very eye-opening. I feel like they're all around us, and it's very humbling, and it feels a little daunting, honestly, because I just feel like there's so much, even when I try my very best to make whatever project, whatever I'm producing, I feel like I could just still be missing the mark. And I don't know. Can you speak to that? Is there a checklist you have of here's the, so that you are hitting, I guess, at least from your experiences of what you've learned you need to hit on the accessibility marks?
Yeah, I would take that. What we believe is, when we are working with a company, they come and say that, hey, we want to make our website accessible. That's not how it works, right? It's a gradual process you follow. It's regular testing you do. It's regular verification you do. say you release a website today and you keep on adding new features to it, but then you don't test each of those features, right? Your website breaks at that particular point when you release a new feature without testing it or without validating it. So what we believe is making something 100% accessible might be difficult. It's more of putting in efforts to increase the accessibility of it gradually so that someone who is interacting with it feels better every time he visits the website or any digital content he is interacting with, be it with PowerPoint presentations, be it with PDFs which we are sharing, email newsletters which companies put out. They take a JPG or PNG and put it in an email and send it out, but that's not an accessible way of sharing content across the organization, assuming that the organization has persons with disability as employees, right? So that's something which we follow as a mantra, that you don't directly attempt at 100%, but you gradually build accessibility into your digital platforms or content.
And
Really
also
like that.
the first thing on the checklist is that don't assume, ask. It's such an important thing that when we start, we also start with our judgments and assumptions about things, but it is best to ask and see what the target audience is requiring. What is it that they really need out of that particular element, because sometimes just for the tick mark of the checklist we try to put in everything and we miss out on the real important elements that are required for that target audience. So be it, if you're designing a website which does focus towards an content which is for groups with visual impairment, or it is for neurodiverse audiences, then how do you change the structure of it? How do you work around, and in some cases also tweak certain rules that are meant for high contrast or colors or fonts?
I read this somewhere. There is a statement called as nothing without us for us, right? That is somewhere wherein the persons with disability come in. But there was another article which said modify this just to nothing without us, because it's not only that you're building for a group of people, that's when you are involving them, but they should be a part of the user journey across, because then you build for everyone, right, from scratch.
No, I keep going back to, it was a while ago now that you were talking about, if it snows, would you clear off first the ramp or the stairs? And it's like, well, of course you clear off the ramp, because that lets everybody in. Everybody can use the ramp. Why would you not start there?
That is so funny that you went back to that, because that was immediately what I wanted to bring up, because I was
it's stuck in my head as soon as you said it. I was like, it's so obvious. I think that's why. So it's like, if you say it to anyone, they go, of course, the ramp. Because then, right, certainly people who could have used the stairs can use the ramp, but also wheelchairs and strollers and walkers and carts and loading, and everything. Anyone. Why would you not start with the ramp? that was all when you were talking about, right, nothing about us without us. How about just nothing without us? How about just start with the ramp?
Even the captions we are using, right? Like, say this is posted tomorrow on different social media platforms. Someone in India is viewing this in a traffic in Mumbai. Imagine if they forget their headphones at home, they won't be able to listen to what we are speaking, but the captions help them understand what we are speaking.
Oh yeah, I watch videos on mute all the time.
Well, and not only that, it's another reason I'm tearing up, because I have not done live captions ever on stream before. And we're like, we have to do it this year. And you both encouraged me to make the push. And so I made the push for our corporation to splurge and do this. And shout out to the caption team and to Tracy, who is doing it for this whole stream. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. But I always have captions on, always, no matter what content I'm consuming. And I have ADHD and neurodivergence, and it's just really hard for me to focus sometimes on what's being said. And so I'm tearing up because of how easily I'm able to follow what you're saying. And I didn't realize the fight that I was having before during live streams. And so I'm just this is so powerful and it's in action right now. And so thank you both for pushing me to do this. I'm just blown away. And also like by your stories, they're really powerful. And the work that you do is so freaking cool. I was just reading, I was like, wow, this is like the coolest thing ever. You both are just, I don't know, it's very unique too. I feel like your stories and the space that you've created and just how you're pushing accessibility forward. I'm humbled and in awe. I wanna make sure that we have time to do any shout outs or wrap up that you wanted to do. But speaking of the ramp analogy, is there anything else from the physical accessibility world that has taught you things and that creators should take into the digital world?
I think for me particularly, one of the most important thing in the physical space is that it's not only about the entering into the building, right? Your emergency evacuation also plays an important role. Like how do you exit accessibly, along with like making sure that at that point in time when everybody's just trying to make sure that they are safe in that point, in case of an emergency where everybody's taking care of themselves, how does a person with disability also evacuate in an accessible format? I think that has been a learning for digital space also, in terms of maintaining safety and having zero tolerance for error. That how do you make sure that when a person lands onto your website, has easy way out also? They are not struggling and like just like trying to just go back or like just close the tab because they're not able to move backwards also. I think that is an important thing of going back, being able to reach certain points where you want to go on a landing page. So I think that has been one thing that I particularly draw inspiration from the physical space and the digital space.
For me, again, it's something similar, but from a user journey point of view. In a physical space, again, like Sir mentioned, you enter a building, you visit the ground floor, but then when you have to go to the first floor, there is no lift, there are only stairs, right? Then you're stuck inside. So similar for a website, a lot of companies say that, hey, my homepage should look good, it should be accessible. But what about the billing pages which are inside, which are more crucial than your homepage, right? If you don't understand where to enter your card details, you mess up your billing cycle and you don't end up ordering the product you want to order. So it's about the entire user journey, right from the start to moving within the space till the end. And as Sir mentioned about exiting from the space, like we have these mood boards or the steps for a user to interact with the website. Similar is with accessibility as well. You need to have it at every point, and it's not a plugin, right? It should be a mandate. It should be like an obvious thing to do. Like you have correct font on your website, you have accessible website built in by design.
And also accessibility, that's one thing that I always end any presentation, sessions, talks that I give. Like almost all my 18 TEDx talks that I've given do end with this one statement, that accessibility should not be a virtue, it should be a habit.
I really like that. Yeah, it's not something I think that also ties in, you mentioned earlier about like, it's not about going from 0 to 100 or creating something that's perfect on the first shot. It's about, every time someone comes back, can we make it a little bit more accessible? Can we make it better? And that if we build that in muscle memory, like a habit, then it becomes something that's part of our workflow rather than some virtue that we're trying to achieve once or have to convince someone of once. It just is part of what we do when we build.
Oh my goodness. We are close to the end of this segment, but I wanted to give you the chance to say any other points that we didn't prompt you to say and you really wanted to, and as well as any shout outs. I know there's a survey that you wanted us to put in the chat. And so if there's any other resources or things that you wanted to shout out.
Sure. So as this is our 10th year and our 10th year of Shattering Illusions, we have come up with, thank you. We have come up with this thing called Access Beyond Borders, and it looks at creating a community of people working in the space of accessibility. The entire world knows what's going on in India right now, and like how suddenly borders have become such a important thing, and how we can we want to create a space where using the elements of digital accessibility that can, allow anybody, even sitting in Serbia or in UK, be part of this community. So we would request you to share the link which Rohan has already shared with you all, and encourage more people to join the group and the collective that we are trying to create. The whole idea is that through this collective, we want to send out resources that we have learned, we have gathered in last 10 years, disseminate that information, put out toolkits, and also create a community which can interact with each other, because sometimes we all have similar questions, but we don't know who's answered them where, and we end up reinventing the wheel. And in order to cut that process out, we thought that if we have like-minded individuals together, we can all work in this space. So we would really appreciate if you could put the link. It's a 5-question form, and that will allow us to have you on our database, and we can start working together.
We will absolutely share that. Yes, that is it sounds like
we'll request you all also to sign up on that.
All right. Well, Alyssa, you're on mute.
Sorry.
There
I was like,
go.
why am I not wording? Just to double check, is it accessforall.co or was there a different one? Because I didn't want to paste the wrong one into chat. I was like hunting for the right one. I'll grab the, no worries if it's different.
No,
It.
If you want, we can send you the link.
Perfect. I'm gonna, because I just want it to be attached in time to this video so that people can have it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's accessforall.co, and that's the page. So it's in the link.
Thank
Got
you. Amazing.
I will go ahead and share that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, well, I hope you both have a wonderful, it's evening for you, yes?
Yes, 8 in the evening. Yeah.
8, yes. Well, I hope the rest of your night is very peaceful, and thank you again so much for coming on and sharing your expertise. It was amazing having you.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see. I need to grab. So our next one is going to be a little bit different. I will do the introduction in the past, so you'll see the recording in a moment. However, I want to do a preamble because there's a bit of a difficulty with the live captions and StreamYard and showing them both at the same time. So I want to bring up the live captions link for this event, and you can go and pull that up while the video is playing. But anytime I have to share something from a guest, or which we're keeping to the minimum because of this issue, we'll have to split and branch, and you'll have to see the live captions on that webpage. And so here is, let's see, we did put it in chat.
I did put it in chat. When you put it up, I just put it up on screen, and it does cover the captions. So I'm going to be quiet for just a moment, and then I'll share the link. But you'll see it here. I'll say it out loud. It's https captionpros.onecapapp.com/event/human-first. And that is in the chat log. I will share it again as well for those of you that are following the chat on our LinkedIn or on Twitch. You can go ahead and pop that open and it will show you. It's also great if you want to see more than just the last 3 lines or whatever what we've been saying, if you want to go back and check something. But that will pop open the captions for you in your own browser window, and you can follow along. So apologies that we're not able to get them quite side by side, dealing with some technical limitations. But
I'll know for next time. I'll know for next time, because it's my first live captions experience. But at least there is a way to view them. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive into our next guest. You ready? You ready, Catherine? Let's do it.
It's a really good interview.
I know it is.
Of having already done it and knowing what's in it, and I'm here to tell you, you're gonna love it. So yeah, let's get it going.
Okay, that matters. Dr. Jutta Treviranus is the director of Inclusive Design Research Center at OCAD University and the founder of the Inclusive Design Institute. She's established the world's first graduate program in inclusive design. She's advised international accessibility standards. She's led award-winning research on equitable AI, and she's helped major public and private organizations build systems that center around human uniqueness from the ground up. I am so very honored to have her with us today. Her impact on this field has been profound. So welcome. I'm so excited you're here. Would you be willing to start by sharing a bit of your story, how you came into the work of inclusive design, what pulled you into it in the first place?
Okay. Well, a long time ago, back in 1979, when I was graduating, my first job was to work with 12 university students. And it was to determine how they could participate in university fully. And these amazing group of individuals were beginning their university career right at the emergence of the personal computer. And so I thought, oh, wow, here is a wonderful translation device. And the barriers that they were experiencing was the whole range. And so we started to experiment, and we developed things like text-to-speech, speech-to-text, alternative keyboards. And at that time, it was sort of a skunk works. You could do almost anything. You could hack the computer far more. It's like, the old cars that the mechanics were able to play with. But now, of course, they're so complex that you no longer can. And so with this group of students, I was hooked. So I thought, wow, here is an opportunity to create systems that are one size fits one, because of course each of the students was so different, and we needed to create a whole variety of different things. So it wasn't like a building that you're creating where you only have one door, right? You can't sort of quickly change the door the minute somebody who requires something else arrives. So of course you can. There are other strategies there, but the mutability and the ability to reshape and be responsive in these digital systems was what hooked me. But the biggest part that hooked me is the ability to work with people who have to be resourceful, like a whole very, very diverse group of people who can't be complacent, who cannot assume that the world is going to work for you. And so the innovative things we did at the time, where it was just such it was a great experience. I mean, to be able to be so creative.
Did that naturally lead into the progression of your career, or was it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Once, it gave me a lot of insights into how we design our world. What are the systems within our society that lead to risks and issues, not just for people who have disabilities, but also for just anyone. And at the time, I mean, one of the things in reflecting back, now that you're having me think about the past, is I was very naive. I thought it would continuously progress, right? Things would get better and better. We would all become...
That's kind of my current mindset, so just beware. You're like, spoilers ahead.
Yeah. So we would all become wiser. We would all start to understand this. We would have more equity. We would recognize just how important it is that everybody can participate. But of course, the other thing that over my career since 79, things have gone up and down, and it's been sort of a reinforcement of many of the things that I realized at that time, that when we don't consider diversity, then we're not prepared for the times when we all face crisis, when we design just for the complacent average, or for things that are typical, or and I'm in academia now, right? So I think academia has a lot to account for in terms of the reduction of truth and evidence to largely statistical reasoning and statistical impact, and how we've designed our systems of promotion, our funding, our what we deem to be publishable, all of that. But also, I see how it permeates, of course, our markets, our politics, our the various things. So yes, that did start me down in both a practical and a philosophical bent on what we have to change this. I mean, this is just wrong, and I'm hoping people understand just where we're taking the world if we don't address the needs of recognize that we're all very diverse, and recognize that we should be designing for that diversity, that's where there's innovation, that's where we prepare for the unexpected, that's the truth that we haven't as yet uncovered, or the unexplored knowledge domain that we really need to explore, etc. All of those things that are the clarion call of, I don't know, governments, companies, etc. We're missing them, right? We're looking in the wrong direction.
It like immediately came to mind as wondering, what is the most useful way for pushing this forward? We've been advocating for this for a really long time, and you've seen back and forths. Is, in my mind, I'm like leading by example, or I don't know, just like really just constantly being the forerunner and the advocate, like very vocally. Like, has there been something that has just helped you to push it forward, whether on different projects, companies, like globally, whatever the scope?
My team says Jutta's response to everything is diversity. And so I push against this notion that there's one winning way to do it, or one appropriate way, or one best way. In fact, I don't like using the word or the solution even, because what's a solution for one person may not be for another. And if we assume that we've solved it and fixed it and dismissed it, then we're missing out on people. So, and I'm not very judgmental in terms of the approach that we take. I mean, I take whatever approach I can, and you have to be opportunistic, you have to be resourceful, and depending on the context and what organization you're in, or what resources you have around you, it's very, very different approaches. So I don't like to answer that question with a single thing, but I can answer it with an anecdote. One of the things, well, this is one of those optimism, pessimism things. During the pandemic, I thought, there was a lesson that kept being repeated, which was none of us are safe unless all of us are safe. And I thought, oh, wow, maybe we'll learn from this particular crisis. And for a while, I think there were quite a number of things that emerged. But of course, it again was the cycle, the action reaction. And unfortunately, we didn't continue to attend to that particular lesson, although I think there were some changes. But that would be somewhat tragic if the only way that we can move forward with this is because of a crisis, as a way to mobilize people. But I am coming to think that is the case. So the thing that surprises me, or that is one of the ways in which this happens. The thing that surprised me is with the geopolitical issues at the moment, that especially here in the US, it has caused a mobilization of so many people. I mean, it has woken up this groundswell of people who are now extremely supportive. I'm hoping that's not what it always takes, but maybe sometimes we have to get as low as possible before we recognize, oh my, we need a change. This has to change. And much of what we require is a really fundamental change.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Sorry, Catherine.
I want to jump in and ask you this is a while ago now, but I'm still curious about it. When you were talking about this, you mentioned kind of from a more like practical, technical standpoint, when you were working with these students doing text to speech and adaptive inputs. I wondered kind of how much that has changed between that time and now, because those are still technologies that are crucial for access now that we're working to accommodate when building web apps and software.
Yeah.
As you were saying that, I was like, oh, for some reason, I would have thought that would be different, or there would be different technologies, or we would have changed to something newer and better. And I wonder how much that's the case, or how much we're still doing the same kind of
yeah, and in fact, there were further alternatives for many people back then, because, well, further alternatives in the research space, or well, and even in the small medium enterprise space. So, for example, in terms of someone, say, who has very limited, poorly controlled movement, we had a huge range of possible alternative keyboards, alternative ways of moving a pointer, alternative ways if you couldn't directly access. So rather than simply a single switch row column scanning and things like that, or yeah, there's not many alternatives actually on the market at the moment. You could use whatever movement you had and then create a code, designate something to happen with that particular thing. The issue is that the market takes over and there's economies of scale, and because there is such huge diversity amongst people with disabilities, there are no economies of scale. And so the customer base, if you offer a unique choice, is so much smaller. And so there are so many forces that are actually not allowing us to have a greater variety of access. That isn't the case for everything. When it serves other market needs, like pattern recognition, and then there's massively life-changing alternatives for people who are blind. When speech recognition, but if you have an average conventional voice. So those things originally started out, or the experimentation on those was done with people with disabilities, but they have become useful for everybody, and so they take off. So where there is another motivation for some of the assistive technologies or alternative access systems, they've progressed quite a bit. I was, though, talking to somebody, or there was a keynote here, and they were saying that brain-computer interfaces now have, as though it was something new and innovative, now have non-invasive alternatives so that somebody can drive a cursor with just thinking. And the irony of that is that that's preceded the more invasive surgeries that implant brain-computer interfaces. And way back in the 80s, we had EEG pattern recognition systems that would allow you to drive the cursor up, down, left, right. So I think there's also not a great memory of what has already been there.
It's probably unfortunately true for a lot of tech. We lose that institutional memory.
Oh, it's amazing to see the span of your career and the differing technologies, just from the early computers that you're talking about and that technology versus, I think you recently gave, it was either a keynote or a session on AI and the intersection between that and inclusive design. And it's just, for me, at least from like my perspective of standing far back and not at the details, I'm like, wow, we've come a long way. But then to hear you say like, actually, we had a lot of this technology before, it's very interesting. Do you think with things like AI and just with the growth in that space right now, that things are getting better or going to get better for assistive technologies, or do you not anticipate much?
Well, so I characterize AI as having 3 generations. It's a overgeneralization, but when in the second generation that we had, and actually even in the third, I think we went in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So back in the 80s, we were using AI, and it was what I would call a literal system. So we gave a literal command to the AI and it would follow it. We gave it the full directions. It required a lot more training to do things like voice recognition, and I was working on voice recognition for people with dysarthric speech. So they had to train it quite a bit. It certainly wasn't at the level, so the natural language processing was definitely not at the level of ChatGPT. But when it finally did get trained, it was very well tuned to someone that was far from the average. So it would work very, very well for someone who is far from the average. What we have now is a statistical reasoning machine that reverts everything to the mean. So every decision, every production, every response to a prompt is based upon statistical reasoning. So what that means is that you're always going towards the average. So when you say, have things gotten better, there's amazing functionality, but we are reducing diversity. I call it almost a digital eugenics infrastructure, because we are discouraging those unique things, the quirky things, whether it's in the decision of what is offered by the AI as a response to a prompt, as something that is generated. It's all based upon the average within this large pool of data. But if you are unlike the average, if what you're interested in is not like what everybody else is interested in, then it doesn't serve you well, especially if the system is being used to sort, choose amongst, filter out people. So like in employment or academic admissions, or to determine whether you get a loan or not, how high your insurance is going to be, or whether you're a threat in the suspicion systems. It's getting worse and worse, right? It is performing very poorly. For people with disabilities, if the goal of what you're using AI for is to become more average, then it works wonderfully. But even there is a differential impact, because it works the worst for people that need it the most. So if you are in, say, a poor environment and all the labels around you are in a different language, and you're blind and you want to use a pattern recognition system, it's probably not going to work very well. If you are trying to ensure that your voice is understandable to somebody and you're using voice recognition to reinterpret it, if your voice or the way that you pronounce things is far from the mean, then it's not going to work as well. And the difficulty with that is that I've heard again and again employers saying, oh, we don't need any further accommodation. There's another employee who's blind and they're using AI. AI should solve this, right? But of course, the problem is that yes, it might solve it for one person, but it won't solve it for the next. And so it's creating almost a disparity within people with disabilities.
That these patterns of exclusion are alarming to me, because I assumed the longer you used whatever particular version of AI you're using, the more it would train around you and your specific needs and kind of like be this own custom channel. And so it's alarming to hear that it's kind of the opposite, I guess.
Well, okay, so let me add a proviso to what I've just said. With Gen AI and with things like the very, very large language models, you've got a foundational model that is trained on trillions, like it's massive, trillions and trillions of data points. And it is an extremely polluted pool. It's a cesspool of everything that could be scraped from the internet. And especially with respect to disability, if you look at what is on the internet related to disability, it's pretty horrific. It's bad jokes, it's portraying people as poor victims or demons, or demonizing them, or there's inspiration porn, as it's called, where you have this story of the heroic person overcoming all obstacles in some miraculous way. And none of that is very accurate. And so when you add your data to that polluted pool, it's still going to be a tiny piece of that. It's like you're adding a bit of specific stuff to a polluted ocean. And so the further you are from the average or the conventional, the harder it is to push that entire ocean into, like, pour a little bit of dye into and you want to change the color. You need to do a lot more. If you're average or typical, it's wonderful. It works very quickly and very well. But at the moment, there's another turn. There's sort of a pivot point where we're starting to see things like narrow AI, and we're seeing agents which are trained for a very specific purpose. And we're seeing on-device AI. So I'm actually somewhat optimistic that we're turning a bit of a corner where it's not this drive towards Gen AI that can be used for everything, and where we just accept this large polluted pool and we demand more data be thrown into it. But rather we're starting to think about how do we design AI for a variety of purposes.
Yeah, I liked the one size fits one phrase that you used earlier. Is that something you think is achievable when we're looking at something like an on-device AI? If it's like, if I'm using it, it's training off my data. Is that possible?
Well, that's one of the things we're experimenting with.
I'd ask you the easy questions, right?
Can we create this curated? Can we create this sort of curated space where we have bottom-up data, and we can salvage what we can from, say, a large language model. So we'll accept your grammar corrections, we'll accept your spell checking, we'll some of the semantic parsing that you're doing, but we won't let the actual content through, right? Or things like that. So we're experimenting with how do we filter out that polluted ocean and create a data pool that is actually useful and that will serve each individual. We're also, one of the other things we're experimenting with is actually inverting the algorithm, because much of what serving people with disability, or much of the problem with AI and disability, has been characterized as there's a data desert. The AI is biased against people with disabilities because they've been excluded from the data. But even if we have full proportional representation in data, it will still decide with the majority. So that is not going to solve the problem. And it puts people at quite a bit of risk as well. I mean, there's so many things associated with giving up your data. The privacy protections definitely don't work for you if you have a disability, because you'll be unique, you can be re-identified. Removing the items from the data set that apply to you and identify as you having a disability will mean that the system will also not serve you well. And most people, because they require essential services that also then take your data, will barter their privacy for those essential services. So one of the other things that we are looking at is, rather than seeing this as a data problem, see it as an algorithm, like more than a data problem. And so what we've done is we've experimented with inverting the algorithm so that rather than the AI looking for the average, it's looking for missing perspectives. So it's called an exploration algorithm. Who are we missing within our company, or what perspectives? What are the students that have not actually are not part of the pool as yet, etc. So that those are some of the things that we're trying to do to counteract that homogenization that is currently happening.
That is honestly sad and exciting at the same time, the uphill battle that, because my first thought was, well, we just throw out the ocean, right? If it's polluted, we just chuck it. But no, a new algorithm sounds better and easier than
And starting completely from scratch every single time.
yeah, no, that doesn't sound smart, does it? No. I wanted to ask about, because we've had a higher level conversation, I wanted to see if you had any real world examples that come to mind about or improved a specific experience.
Yeah, there's lots of examples. Because I'm at a conference where web is a big part of the discussion, the first thing that comes to mind is the web. The accessibility community became involved in the web right from the beginning. And so there was the compunction or the prompt to make things more flexible. And if you were to do an analysis of what are all the web design decisions over the course of the life of the web that were beneficial versus that were destructive or not beneficial to society as a whole, it's all of those decisions that made it more adaptable and more flexible. And the things that caused constraints, whether due to design or due to this proprietary ownership of parts of the web or the monetization of the web, those are the things that caused it to sort of go sideways or to not actually serve the societally positive goals that the web originally had. Another example, more close to home to me. I started a graduate program in inclusive design at OCAD, and right from the beginning, I wanted it to be available to students who all around the world, as diverse, radically diverse a group of people as possible. And I wanted to make it possible for people who had careers, who had families they had to take care of, who couldn't attend university full time. And so I made it hybrid. I created all these structures so that people that had to attend remotely would still feel included. And we supported a whole variety of different requirements in terms of students, including ASL and captioning and the accessibility components, but also other parts of the design that would acknowledge that people have different lives, they have different contexts, and let's make it possible for them to participate. And then the pandemic hit, and everybody had to go remote, right? Everybody was in panic. We didn't have to do anything. We just...
Yeah, you were doing hybrid before it was cool, right?
Right, yeah. Because we recognized that you needed those choices. And so it was seamless. We didn't change a thing. And everybody just kept sailing through the experience. But the rest of the university, that was definitely not the case.
I feel like that's just one of those moments where you're like over here waving the banner. You're like this people, right?
See, we could have had this the whole time. Yeah. That felt, you touched on it earlier, but that was almost hard to watch, the way we saw a lot of access barriers come down during the pandemic, and so much was moving to be hybrid or asynchronous or remote, and we were accommodating in a way that we had to be. And I remember thinking this is great. So much of this is going to stick around, and we will have learned from this lesson, and we we just don't quite seem to have in the way that I had hoped.
Yeah,
No, I
that's
absolutely
definitely the
agree.
case. That every crisis I hope it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
One step
But
back. Yep.
unfortunately, recently, I'm thinking it might be 2 steps forward, 3 steps back.
Oh no. Oh no, I definitely feel that though. With even I was telling one of my friends that it felt like we were a pendulum where we just kept swinging back and forth, and they were like, "No, I think we're more of a spiral. We're like slowly building on the thing that we learned before, even though we're coming back exactly where we were before." And I'm like, "Okay, hopefully we're 1 step forward then."
Okay. It's interesting because one of the discussions we have is how do we reduce that polarization? Because if a pendulum, you have just 2 forces. So adding a whole variety of perspectives stops it from swinging to the extremes. And actually, and there, of course, we were talking about not getting to these extremely awful positions or opposing positions, reducing the disharmony and fragmentation that we have within society. We do this exercise where we take a pendulum and then we knock it from multiple directions, and it slowly circles to the middle so that it's no longer,
Yep. Although Catherine has a background in art, and she and I were talking, I wanted to build one of those pendulums with the paint bucket. And so, of course, when you're describing this, mine is flinging paint, just so you know. But,
Yeah, that's great. The other thing the other physics related exercise we did with kids was to show if you wanted to balance a platform on something, then putting things on only 2 sides, it's going to be very, very unstable. The best way to balance it is to put position things all around the entire platform. Yeah.
it's really, I like that. I like when people take like a physical, it helps me grasp onto a very abstract idea, but that is very meaningful in the long run. I wanted to ask you if there's anything, we kind of touched on it a little bit, but if there's anything in particular that's giving you hope right now. If there's one thing that folks can carry forward after hearing you today. Is there anything that you're just like?
Yeah, I think what is giving me hope is just the groundswell of communities that have been mobilized to say, no, we're not going in that direction, right? This is enough of this. This has to change. And so I'm taking part in a lot of communities where it's mutual aid, where there's recognition that we are dependent on each other. We do need to support each other. And this notion of survival of the fittest and the increase in disparity is not something that is beneficial to anyone. So I guess it's hope in the midst of something that is really quite depressing in terms of where the world is going at the moment. So I'm trying to take the long view. I'm trying to think, okay, there will be a reaction to what's happening right now. And we hopefully, this will be an even more extreme lesson right now. I'm sort of bracing myself for, okay, what's the crisis that's going to be more of a tipping point, or, and I'm hoping that's not too horrific. I see changes in almost every field right now where people are thinking about, what are the economics of inclusion, and recognizing that there are major economic benefits to it. Even in design, I'm in a design school, but I'm sort of at odds with a lot of the design conventions within that. So, for example, the usual design thinking mantra is the design thinking squiggle, where you ideate and go as broadly as possible, but then you winnow down to a winning solution through some sort of majority rules process, where you iterate and, either with sticky notes or voting or that sort of thing, you come to a winning solution, which you then scale across whatever, all sorts of contexts. And instead, what we've been proposing is what we call the virtuous tornado, where you rather than winnowing down to a single winning solution, because if there's a winner, there's a loser, and guess who the losers are? What you do is you iterate to stretch the system to be more adaptable, more flexible, and more expansive, and thereby have far greater longevity. And I think that's the design strategy of this age, because things are so unpredictable, and we need those choices so that when the crisis comes, we haven't put all our eggs into this one winning solution. We have a bunch of choices, and we can adapt and be more dynamically resilient. I don't know if that answered your question, but
that makes perfect sense. It's like you talked about with your hybrid program, right? Because you had that flexibility built in. You started with the tornado, and then when something actually came through, you were able to accommodate the struggle of the pandemic and everything going virtual, because you'd already tested that program out to the very boundaries of how far you could flex it, and it withheld.
Yeah. It goes about all the way back to her very first answer, where she was talking about the one thing people describe you as diversify, right? Where it's just like the tornado of diversity.
yeah.
I don't think we could ask for a much more perfect wrap up than that.
No.
You brought that full circle.
I am just so honored for you taking time. I know your schedule is crazy right now. So can I just say thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on. Is there any shout outs that you want to give or resources you want to point to before we wrap today?
Okay. Well, we have all of our resources are free. Please steal them. You can we've white labeled them. You can claim that they're your own. So we're at idrc.ocadu.ca, or if you're interested in AI, WeCount.inclusivedesign with no space or .ca is the other place to go. And we're in the middle of creating an equitable and accessible AI standards with Accessible Canada. And that we just had a public review, so there's lots of comments already, but there will be an opportunity to contribute to that as well.
That's
absolutely
amazing.
Fascinating. You're like on the ground floor of everything cool. Amazing. Sorry. Back to professionals. Thank you so much. I will make sure that those links find their way into the chat and the description as well, so people can easily find them and reference them in post. But I think that's all. Catherine, anything else from your side?
No, I think that was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Oh, I'm muted. Hello. All right, we've got captions back. Catherine, are you ready to hop back on? Maybe? I cannot unmute you. You have to. It says you must choose it for yourself.
I watched you make the same mistake and then did it myself 2 seconds later.
I was trying to do it for you. The technology was
No,
no.
it won't let us.
That was an amazing segment. She is actually on a flight to Brussels. And so I saw in the chat, you're asking, can we ask questions? Normally, I would say 100%. Let's go with the flow. But this was our only guest for this stream that we had to pre-record. We did that last night because today she's on her way to speak at a conference, actually. And so if you have any questions, we can file them over to her. She also has those 2 links that I highlighted, but it was just an honor having her come on and share her expertise. Our next guest, I'm very excited about. I'll let you do the introductions, Catherine, and bring on the screen.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me bring on Bekah. Bekah Rice is an accessibility specialist and a UI/UX developer who focuses on inclusive development practices. She's previously spoken on form accessibility, usable interaction patterns, especially for screen readers and mobile users. And she's been on with us actually before and a returning Coda Live guest. So we're super happy to have you. Thank you for coming back.
Thank you for having me.
I was wondering if you could add any details though, because when we were writing these intros, I was like, I don't want to take words away from anyone though. So is there anything you want to add to your story or yourself, who you are for people in the community?
I guess the one thing I can add is I've been with the company I'm at right now, True Matter, for over 12 years now. So when I'm sure anyone knows when you've been in one place for a long time, you start to take on more hats. You start to kind of try out different roles. So I do a lot of different things in my day-to-day. I feel really lucky that I get to do that. But at the core of it is usability. And so I eat, breathe, whatever else you could possibly do, accessibility and usability. And anytime I get to talk about it, I'm really excited because I'm sure, my friends and husband are tired of it. So, but yeah, that's really it. I do this, and I'm a big advocate of the arts. That's another big part of my life right now, is working for a nonprofit called the Jasper Project, who works with artists in the Midlands. And that's kind of my other passion outside of accessibility.
That is so cool. Have you been doing that for a while?
Yeah, since the pandemic, I joined the board, and then, like with all things, I just kept taking on more and more responsibility. And so, yeah, now I have the joy of being their operating director. So it's a lot of fun. My husband's an artist, and a lot of my friends are. So it's just a great way to get to be a part of that community and give back. And even in a small way, because in South Carolina, we're a small little group here, but we're growing.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I'm looking up because I didn't want to get too off topic early on, because I was like, I have a question for you. And I was like, no, Alyssa, be focused. So I'll kick us off properly. And then if we want to rabbit hole, we can. Could you walk us through any common accessibility pitfalls that you see in form design, or how you could just help teams avoid those pitfalls?
Oh boy, there could be books written on this. Actually, there are many, none that I have written yet. But
we like to start our gifts off with a real softball question. Yeah.
Listen, man, I need all the answers now. All right.
Honestly, I think the biggest one is just that they're too long. That's something I'm going to harp on a lot, because that's something that goes past just your standard, check the box of accessibility, and really goes into just inclusive design and good usability. Is people they want everything they can get from you. They want all the information. And so we'll design these forms that capture the key things we need, and then we just keep adding on. And so anytime we're filling out a form online, just as a general person, using forms, it's a burden. I don't want to do it. And if you're going to make it longer, thanks. I think that's really a big one that I don't know is as obvious as some of the things like labeling. You would think that would be less of a problem now, because I am happy to say, like Jutta said in her talk, I am hopeful. Things have gotten a lot better in the digital accessibility space online, in my opinion, especially when it comes to forms. A lot of the out of the box form builders now have pretty good accessibility baked in. And that's technical accessibility. So they, again, check in the box, making sure they have everything. So things like form fields that aren't labeled, I see less and less now, but I'm still surprised every now and then when it's someone just sticks a placeholder in the field. It's yep, covered it, all good. So don't do that. That's a big one. Yeah. In general, I think that's one of the second kind of biggest thing, other than just being too long, is just how we label things, how we give instruction. I feel like the instruction at the beginning of a form is just as important as after you've submitted it. Tell me what's next. Did I do it? All done, success. But if it was part of a process, let me know, when can I expect to hear back from you? What do I have to do after this? That's really key to that whole experience. Same with errors. Tell me exactly what I did wrong and make it obvious. I'm not paying attention. I need it really loud. And I think that's something that, people, we love a toaster. We love a good toaster message. They look cute. They're fun. But that thing's gone so fast that, at least for me, like if you put anything important in there, I'm going to miss it. So using those for errors and success messages can be good if it's real short and succinct, which it should be, but can often, leave people like with what do I do? Where are my instructions? So if I had to say two big things, it would be those: length and clarity of instruction.
I feel like I'm always trying to remind other developers and designers that nobody cares about your form as much as you do. Like, if 100%. I'm just a user.
Wait, you're saying the form is the baby? Like they're very precious. Like they must.
To you, yeah,
you very think frustrating a lot about baby.
This form, right? But everyone else the form is just the means to an end. They're not taking any particular joy in the act of filling out a form. They want to be done filling out a form, ideally as fast as possible. So.
Exactly. And God forbid you don't let me use autocomplete. And that's something that again, is kind of like from an accessibility standpoint, not always great. But at the same time, for usability and, again, inclusive design, if you're someone that utilizes it and it's disabled, it's a nightmare. It's like, why do I have to type this? That's another big one that I do randomly see. And I know like there's security concerns and privacy concerns depending on the browser, but can be very helpful when you're filling out long forms, for sure.
I had a question that kind of veers us a little bit off where, do you see anything as far as AI goes, where with these emerging tools, because there's a bunch of them, including AI and using AI, that play with building or breaking accessible forms?
Yes. I won't give any specifics, but I really love, like, you hit it on so many good points. I loved her talk. But a big thing, obviously, we know with AI is it's all about averages. And so with all of these form builders, as I mentioned, a lot of them have great accessibility features, and almost all of them have an AI feature now, where it's like, you want to get back to work and do more important things and make a form. It's like, we can't be bothered to fill out the form. We also can't be bothered to actually build our own forms anymore. And I get it, it's all about efficiency. But where AI really fails us in that regard is, again, it's all about averages. What's best for most people is not going to be best for marginalized groups and those that have needs and need a level of accessibility that AI can't pick up on, or doesn't have the subtleties to make a judgment call about, is this labeled in a clear and concise way. It might be like, well, this is the term we use for this word everywhere else on the internet, in our big ocean, as she called it. So that's what you should use here, but it might not be right for the circumstance, for the use case of that form, or for the user base. And that's something we just can't account for. Only a person can. So I think these tools can be helpful. And if you're really new to the space, or like you have no experience building forms or with accessibility or usability, I think the real opportunity for AI is for education and for like prompting the user along that path of like making recommendations of what they could do. I'm going to age myself a little, but like thinking about like Clippy, like Microsoft Clippy, his whole job was to tell you like, hey, have you tried clip art? Have you tried these fun new things? I would like to see AI used that way with these form builders, is like, hey, your label here doesn't make a lot of sense. Or, hey, you didn't write a very clear error message for this field. Or how about you don't make all of them required? Things like that, I think, are really helpful. But when it comes to just putting in a prompt and allowing AI to generate a form for you and letting that go, I am not convinced that we're there yet, or that we ever really will be in regards to accessibility of those forms. I think human oversight is always going to be needed, especially with the training models that we're using today, as Jutta alluded to. Like, they're based on the majority, they're based on averages. And so until that changes, until we're kind of reversing that, I think it's going to be really hard to build forms that are truly accessible for everyone when using AI.
I think you're onto something with For Me, and I'd like to see him.
For Me, he already has a name. But I think it's a great opportunity, because I know, like, especially I'll also say, like, for people that have learning disabilities or language disabilities, like, are related to language, I think it can be really helpful to have these AI tools that can explain things for you, or just, I mean, I know we all use like them for summarizing notes and like summarizing just about anything, because again, we're pressed for time. Similarly, if I'm someone that needs assistive technology in any way, being able to use AI to help me fill out this form in a more efficient way is really great. So it's kind of like there for the end user and those building the forms. It just has to be used appropriately and with a little caution, of course.
Absolutely.
So is there for accessibility and with all the things that you've worked on inside and outside of forms, do you have a favorite success story or anything in that vein that you know, I'm like, I feel like on the spot for like, but anything that we were like, this is a win.
I think anytime I can convince a client or a company to prioritize accessibility, it's a win, actually. Which I'm happy to say that is less of a thing. I feel like I do a lot less of like selling the concept of making things usable for everyone. But it's still, I guess that's kind of the big success story, is when we have someone that's like, you know, we recognize our product is not accessible. What can we do to make it? I can't pinpoint like a single story where I've like had someone use something and they were like, man, those accessibility features you put in there, they really paid off. Thank you. I mean, we do the hidden work, you know, working in accessibility. We don't always get that level of like gratification from an actual person.
I remember that back in school, the design school, like, because I took a design development track, and so they taught you both at the same time. And on the design side, they were like, if you do your job right, no one will notice. Like, it should not be like, if someone is pointing, like noticing your design, you did something wrong. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Honestly,
and
good design is invisible.
That's the same thing with forms. If it didn't feel like a chore, like if it didn't feel like, I just lost 5 minutes of my life to this, then you did it well. So congrats. And I think that's what I'm always shooting for, is something that allows you to get whatever you're trying to get done, and in a very fast way. And if you have, you know, the need for assistive devices or something to help you along the way, all of that should be baked in. And like, you know, I said, you won't see it. Most of us won't. But I want it to be there all the time. And that's been the big thing. So just the exciting and kind of success is seeing that more and more people are adopting this in their products. It is always kind of a shame when it's after the fact and they're like, yeah, we spent 5 years building this awesome, all seeing, all doing thing, but it's not accessible, because that's very painful. But if they can think about it from the outset, that's the sweet spot. That's where it turns into something really awesome and wonderful and less of a headache for them in the long run.
I'm curious if you have any recommendations around testing, right? Because forms especially are one of those places where, right? And so what's the joke about, you know, a QA tester walks into a bar, he orders one beer, -1 beer, 1,000 beers. You know, like forms especially open up a place for users to put the weirdest stuff you've ever thought of into an input field. And when like forms are hard to test to begin with. So when you layer on accessibility, I can imagine things start to get tricky, especially if maybe you don't have access to some of the assistive devices that we know folks use and that we need to accommodate. This was a big windup for a very simple question, which was, what do you recommend?
Yeah. I think testing is tricky because, like you said, users are always going to do the thing you don't expect. So I always believe that forms need to be tested by real people. That's the ultimate, like, best way to go. And I know that's not a reality for a lot of teams. They don't have access to that. Or they have a small QA group, or they're doing, God forbid, only automated testing. I do think that has a place. And I think AI is great for that. Like, hey, you want to make sure you can check off some boxes and it's accessible on paper. You know, it's like technically accessible. Use AI for that. That's a great use. You want to make sure it's actually accessible and actually usable. You're going to need some people to try to break it, to do things you wouldn't expect. And the more diversity you can get among those people, the better, because they're all going to want to do different things. They're going to see things differently. I see funny things where people like to save space. You know, we put the unrelated fields in the same row. That's also a big no-no. I should have added to the list earlier, because people will make, when they see things grouped together, they'll make a lot of assumptions. And so they might not even read the whole label and just assume, well, it's next to first name, they must want my last name. You know, things like that we just assume because of these patterns can be major pitfalls that later you're like, wait, why am I getting an error? You know, I did everything right. So I think human intervention with testing, you know, we have to be there to actually physically go through the form. Same with accessibility, you know, like I'm going to test with a screen reader. I'm going to turn off my monitor and I'm actually going to go through it, and it doesn't make sense. I'm going to use a tap device and actually, you know, try not using my mouse or keyboard and like see how that goes. Usually it's very hard. But if it works, yay, we did it. So I think that always needs to be the case with forms, unfortunately, which is another like bonus point for keeping them short. Shorter forms take less time to test. So there we go. Full circle.
Now we're thinking.
Yeah.
I was wondering, besides starting off with accessibility in mind, how do you ensure during the process that it stays a priority when you're working with like fast moving teams, client deadlines, all the things that come up?
This is an answer that no one really wants to hear, unfortunately, only because, I mean, so I think accessibility has to be treated as importantly as any other like epic in the project. It can't be a filler that like, oh, if we have time, let's say we're an agile team, that's just an example I went to, between you know, features, we've got a little time, we've got a little extra space in our development timeline. Let's do some accessibility. It can't be thought of that way. It's great if you do like, hey, some accessibility is better than none. But I think when it's treated as a priority, just as important as any other feature in the product, that's the best way to make sure it stays a priority. It's really a choice. Whenever we see teams that it's kind of like an after the fact thing, I'm still really happy that it's getting done. I just know it's a pain as a developer to go back and retrofit things or change someone else's code to make it accessible. So I think that's the real key. I know that's not easy, especially if you have a team of developers that don't really know a lot about accessibility. Obviously, having it baked in from the get-go can be a lot harder. So that's where I advocate for training for teams so that, you know, they know these things and it's not like something they have to think about. It's just something they do.
Have you seen that help mindset shift where like the team gets trained and then it's like less friction?
Yes.
Moving towards, yeah. Okay.
Certainly. And it's tricky if you have like some people that have that experience and some don't, because depending on how your team works, they might not always be in communication with one another. So having it be kind of it's really like a whole culture shift. Like everyone is in on this. It's not even just developers. It's our designers, it's our project managers, it's our QA team. And I know that sounds like a big thing, but really it's kind of more of an upfront cost, a big thing to start. And then as it keeps going, you kind of learn through doing with accessibility, in my opinion. There are guidelines and following those are obviously the way to go, but like you'll find more and better ways and solutions to meet those guidelines and to make things better as you're doing these things. You can't just like learn it, do it once, you're good forever. So it is kind of more of an upfront thing that is hard, I get.
It's interesting. That really mirrors something that actually our first couple of guests said. They were talking about accessibility as a habit and not a virtue. And I liked that.
Yes.
As like, it's a muscle that you flex over and over. And there's kind of maybe I don't want to say a cost. There's a higher upfront like investment of getting everyone on once. But they were expressing that once they'd done that and once everyone had gone through the process once, that it wasn't like a fight to get buy-in again. That like, everyone could kind of see it and they'd done it and it was feeling much more natural. And it was, you know, to really extend this muscle metaphor beyond where it should probably. It's an exercise that they learned the form of, you know, and then you don't necessarily need the trainer. You can just keep up in the weight on your squats, you know?
Exactly. And it doesn't mean I'm not going to still Google things constantly. And like, I'm on Stack Overflow just like any other developer with my weird random questions for something that I did 10 years ago and I can't remember now. But it's just, it is like it has to be like part of the culture of the team to like, this is what we're doing. Just like anything else, like we're going to test it. We're also going to make it accessible. We're going to validate our code. We're also going to make it accessible. It just becomes a big part of the process. And from there, it just gets easier the more you do it. My opinion.
It is heartening to hear though that like your story mirrors like what you've experienced from different teams and training them up versus like Siddhant and Rohan, where they were like, once we got them onboarded with accessibility standards, then they're like, they won't fight it in the future. They'll be onboarded already. It's heartening that like to hear these success stories in the wild and to know that like because sometimes it does feel like a really, really difficult battle. And sometimes you're like, and so
Yeah.
just to know that like there is proof that it has worked with teams before, and that if you just get past a barrier, right, like it can be easier for everyone. So thank you for sharing that. That's really.
Oh, thanks. I hope it continues to be that way. I'm trying to stay positive. I know, I guess, as Ida was saying, it feels like we're taking steps backwards, and we are. But I do think, in general, when I first started talking about accessibility at different developer conferences, I felt like I was like, wow, no one's really doing this. Is this not something everyone does? And now I feel like I don't have to explain things as much. People just know, like, this is part of their process. Companies do care. We have clients that ask us, okay, so what's your plan for accessibility? Like, those kinds of statements they warm my heart. They make me happy. Because I don't feel like that was the case even 10 years ago. So
did you see a tipping point during that 10 years? Like, do you think it was specifically around COVID, or do you think it was like just more and more developers standing up and saying we should be doing this?
I think, yes, COVID was a big part of that, especially in higher education, obviously, which was already kind of, bound by law to be making things accessible. But this really pushed that further. I hate to say that lawsuits were the big tipping point, but that's where I saw all of this start, is like people are getting sued because their products weren't accessible. So then part of that is not only are you going to have to pay up, but then you have to make your product accessible and have your team maintain it. So that was a big thing. But I think now, because like people have embraced inclusive design and usability so much, accessibility is just a part of that. And so that's just a way of working. And I think all of the developers, especially new folks coming out of school, like they're taught these things. They're expected to know them. If you get hired anywhere, someone's going to ask, hopefully, most of the time. So I think it's been a shift where the more people do it, the more people are talking about it. Just keeps growing. So I hope that continues, and we don't get lazy and forget. But
I'm encouraged by, right? I mean, I think sometimes when we go, I think, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and we're, especially here, we can be a little US centric, but I'm encouraged by things like the European Accessibility Act, which we know is coming this summer, right? So maybe in a global kind of way, maybe we're taking a step back, everyone else is taking a step forward. Yeah. They can drag us with them.
Yes.
I think we're
are we at time? Are we?
Not quite.
I was like, I had another one.
You got time for another one. That's why I was going to kind of tee us up for the maybe one last question.
Okay, cool. I thought you were going to tell me to go away forever. I understand.
Don't go. We've probably got 5-ish more minutes. So I think another question.
I was going to ask you that if you could give developers and designers one golden rule for making better forms, or just better in general, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be form related. Do you have a tip like that would help them?
I can give them a very specific form one, and that's just do less form, make it shorter, say less, be concise, and keep your forms as short as they can be. So that means only asking for the things you absolutely need to complete a process or to capture that data for some other internal purpose. And just try to avoid adding on the extras. I know it's hard because, from a marketing perspective, it's like, I want all their information. I want to know everything they like and what they're going to do tomorrow. And so I know it's really hard to balance those business objectives of capturing all of this and then the usability side of things. So I totally get it. But if you can advocate for that, I think that's a big part, because even the most inaccessible, hard to fill out form is better if it's short. So it's kind of an easy way to make sure that no matter what you do, it's going to be a little better. But I think that, and just, sticking with good best practices. I know you'll ask about this. I do have a really good blog post that I'll share a link, or we can share a link.
Yes.
About this. And, we do a lot of usability testing at TrueMatter, and we have tested this one pattern to death, and it does really well. And so when I go to build forms now, I don't really I think about the process. I think about the people. Where are they? What are they doing? Maybe what's their mindset? But I always go to this pattern, and I have very few cases deviated from it. So I think that speaks to its success, or just usability in general.
What is the name of that pattern, so I can find that link real quick?
So we call it, it's just in a post called The Right Way to Build Forms. And here I put it in the private chat so you can share it. But it's really based on several different studies that we looked at several user tests we've done internally. And you'll notice one thing about it is it looks, oh, this is very mobile friendly. It's mobile first. Yes. As we know, everyone's moving to smaller and smaller devices, even now with our watches and things. So again, shorter forms, having less in them, making them more linear is going to be more successful.
The thought of trying to fill out a form on my watch, actually.
Oh yeah, like I want to cry.
Really? There's so much that like I want to do on this device because I have no idea where the phone is. And so for me, that would be freeing, even though it would be painful. I would fight the pain so I wouldn't have to go find my other devices.
Absolutely not. I think I'm trenched in that like millennial thing where it's like some things are a phone task and some things are a laptop task. And I do think it's a millennial trait. So
yes, agree.
I'm willing to be wrong. I can't think of anything that is a watch task beyond like checking the time. Maybe the weather.
Oh man, no, I literally think if they made like a watch that was half the size of a phone, I know I would wear it. I would wear it with pride.
Really?
Yes.
No, the watch
You don't
It's hard to
understand. You don't understand how often I just like we'll leave the house and we'll be gone for hours, and my husband's like, "Oh, where's your phone?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's a good question, you know." So it just would be nice to have it attached. But oh my gosh, this has been so much fun, Bekah. Other than that amazing post, which I'm really excited to dive into, do you have any other resources or things that you wanted to make sure we hit on today?
No, I think just with anything with AI, I think a healthy dose of caution is good for now. It's still a very exciting time. I know I feel like, especially at conferences, AI gets talked to death, but so much is changing so fast that's why. And I don't want to be discouraging and say, hey, don't use tools that make your job easier and make things more efficient. Because that's mean. And I know that that's also a part of accessibility is things that can make you more efficient and better at your job. But when you are using these tools, just please keep in mind that they're not geared towards everyone that might be using your product. So keep things short and as accessible as you can make them.
I don't think any developers will complain about having to code less things. So
do less.
Do less.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us. All right.
Excited to hear more. Bye.
So I want to flash this up on screen real quick and give it a couple seconds without us talking for her resource, because I didn't want to overlay the captions while we were all talking about it. So I'm going to do that real quick.
Yep. And if you're listening, that's truematter.com/ideas/post/the right way to build forms. The last part dashes all in between. So,
all right. So let's see. Oh yeah. Sorry.
I'm going to preface again. I know that our next guest has some screen sharing to do. So I'm going to point you guys back in the direction of our captions in the browser. So for those of you that may have just joined, we are having a little technical difficulty in that it won't let us share screens and do live captions all in our streaming platform at once. However, we have found a solution, which is you can go directly to the Caption Pros URL that we are about to share, and that will pop open the captions in your own browser. You can follow along, even though we won't be able to share them on our screen here. So I'm going to go ahead and put that back in the chat. And like before, I will pop that up on screen and give it a minute so I won't overlay the captions, but just a heads up that there will be parts of the next guest where I know they are excited to share things on their screen, and I want to make sure that you still have access to captions. So here's that link. captionpros.onecapapp.com/event/human-first, all lowercase. So follow along with us there if there are any points at which we're not able to share the captions on our end. Thank you for understanding as we navigate the technical difficulties. So all of that preamble being said, I'm super excited to bring on Heather.
Yay!
Yay!
Heather, hi! So I'm going to do a quick intro for you, but then please add any details that you would like. Heather Neff is a co-founder for Equivalent, an AI-powered image optimization platform focused on making SVGs and visual content responsive, lightweight, and accessible. Welcome. Do you have anything to add to your intro that you want the community to know about?
Yeah, I identify as someone with both motor and vision disabilities and have gone through a whole like identity shift acquiring disabilities. And that's what threw me as a graphic designer, UI, UX, and web developer into accessible design. And I was a graphics expert. And then I was like, what? I don't know anything about blind users using graphics, and became obsessed. And so that's how I started that.
That is so cool. It's so powerful. Catherine, I don't know if you noticed a theme though today of like people who've had these personal experiences with themselves, those around them, and it just was like a flame, like a little flicker, and it started something and it cast them in this direction, and it's like changing and moving accessibility forward in different spider webs of, you know, the web and across globally. So it's so, Heather, it's so cool. I'm so glad that you're here. Very excited. Catherine did preamble. We do have some screen sharing from you, correct?
I also,
at some point want to do.
It's on YouTube I put the captions on, so you guys shouldn't have to have an issue. I'm an accessibility person, so we have good caption. The reason why I like to start it out is that what we do is graphics, right? So what we're up to is something that a lot of people don't even know exist. And it's one of those things where you try to explain it verbally, and it's just like, it's so complicated and technical. If you just watch it, you're like, oh, cool. But if you try to hear it, it's a little bit harder. So I could start with that, and that might set us off. It's only a minute something long. So let me see if this works. If I can do a present screen share and do
I think that's perfect.
Screen share. And I want to do tech demo on YouTube, and hopefully that's gonna work if I do this. Can you guys see this okay? Ready to go?
I have to get it added to the stage, so give me 2 seconds.
Okay. I'm sharing a black screen that's like basically the beginning of a video. It's just all black.
Let me see.
Shall I do something like this, Catherine? So
Perfect.
Switch off?
Thank you. I was trying to get there and couldn't get there.
There you are. Okay. Okay, I'm going to push play, and it has a voiceover as well. And hopefully the caption will play.
Accessible smart SVGs are capable of animation, as well as responsive resizing for various screen sizes. Smart SVGs can also respond to system-level settings like dark mode, and can continue to resize even when dark mode is enabled. They can also support contrast themes, which allows users to customize the colors of the graphic to suit their needs. Responsive resizing and animation are still supported, even when contrast themes are enabled. Smart SVGs also allow for embedded text that is cursor selectable, keyboard navigable, and indexable by search engines. Our responsive graphics will also rearrange themselves on mobile, so you no longer have to pinch and zoom. All of these features are within a single file, and because they're made of code, they load lightning fast. Smart SVGs can also be used for fave icons, which are displayed in browser tabs and bookmarks. For example, MIT doesn't have a dark mode compatible website or fave icon, even though dark mode is preferred by 85% of users. When dark mode is enabled, the fave icon for the MIT website becomes low contrast with the background and is difficult to see. But with smart SVGs, the logo graphic and the fave icon can support dark mode. Unlike traditional icons, smart SVG fave icons can support contrast themes too. When this default contrast theme is enabled, MIT's logo and icon disappear completely. But with a smart SVG, contrast themes can be used in the fave icon, in addition to the logo, so you can be certain that your branding will be visible to everyone.
Okay, so hopefully stop sharing worked. Did you hear it okay?
Yeah,
okay.
That worked perfectly. Let me...
I put us all
back.
This is...
I was like, I'm just going to try to find the right layout. Do you see it? Let me see.
There we are.
Thank you.
We're there.
Yay. Well, that makes it a lot easier to understand how complex these graphics have gotten, that they're based in code. It's been a long R&D journey to make this cutting edge technology into software so that anyone can make them really easy without having to learn how to do all of that, which is really complicated. So that's where we are. And I'm really excited to share with everybody about what we're up to.
That's amazing. So I just wanted, you founded the company. Connect the story for me. So where your inspiration and all this started and then how it grew from there, because it's really cool, but I'm just like, wait.
How did this happen, right? Exactly. So, well, it's a long story, so I'll try to make it really accessible and not cognitively overloaded. But what happened was I became disabled. I became really interested in teaching other people as someone who can no longer do. I had to teach. And after a very long 20+ year career as a designer, UI UX, web developer, I wrote a book called Equity Through Graphics. It's not published yet because I also rebranded my company. I was doing branding and graphic design and ran a company as that is what you do. But because I had a motor disability and vision disability, I became much more of a creative director and was already in that leadership, teaching at the university level, user experience. And when I stumbled into becoming, I literally became disabled overnight. I tore a ligament in my chest, and then I woke up the next day, couldn't mouse. And as a graphic designer and as a painter, it was devastating. And that whole situation led me to use assistive technologies, became a voice control user, magnification. And then I developed a rare eye disease that's super rare and had cataract surgeries, that messed up my vision. So I can't read anything in print. So I'm forcing dark mode all the time, which is probably why those captions are screwed up, is that I have an extension forcing dark mode because only 1% of the internet offers a dark theme, right? And so I became completely aware that graphics by default are completely inaccessible and people didn't know what they were doing. And that's kind of where it all began as I rebranded the company I thought we would be one of the first accessible graphic design and branding firms in the United States. And I was really passionate about that. And then it turned into a startup. So here we are with software and all kinds of tools for designers to make these.
That's really incredible.
Well, I'm trying to turn that all around and take that grief and shove it into doing something good for the world.
Hell yeah. And even what you created is amazing. Even just that 1 minute walkthrough of the video, right? Because a lot of times we're inclined to reach for SVGs because it is in code. So that lets us adapt things. It lets us animate a lot easier. We're not constricted by some of the same image loading stuff. And it takes you, but again, the flip side of that, it takes you out of the world of things like alt text, right? Mm-hmm. So being able to kind of break that down and not just be like, well, here's a way that, it'll tell you what's happening in the SVG. It's not just that. It's the ability to adapt it, reframe it, swap the colors. That, as soon as you see it, you're like, of course.
And that first logo file has got gradients and it inverses when it goes from light to dark. And it has really a crazy little Fibonacci thing and all kinds of animation. And it can be hyperlinked and metadata behind the scenes like keywords. It can use live text. So it's searchable by search engines and, indexable. So, but that one fluid form logo that you saw, which is kind of complex, it's got a lot of different things going on, was that whole animation, including the light mode, dark mode, and the custom colors, was only 7 kilobytes. And so that optimization of the file behind the scenes is a huge thing. As many of you know, as dev people and graphics people, that SVGs can be bloated beyond belief. And they're way bigger. And so I remember back in the day, I was making SVGs, but I would export them and turn them into PNGs to get them reasonably under 50 kilobytes. And now we're getting into figuring out how to optimize the artwork originally in the problem is part of the problems, optimizing the files in Figma or Illustrator, and cleaning up that vector file. Don't have all this crazy stuff in your layers and so forth, because everything you do that's extra and complicated becomes more code, right?
Yeah, as I say, a lot of times in SVG, if you open it right from Figma or Illustrator, it is I think the technical term is div soup. So
I used to do write SVGs, code them, and the exported ones were, I would almost say, coordinate soup, because they would just numbers.
Things can go wrong with ID things, conflicting on the page of CSS, and it's got a lot. But when we put them in line and there's no JavaScript needed, and we use media queries to ping your devices, so what's happening is it's instantly asking you, are you in dark mode? Are you on a mobile device? What's your preferences? And as an accessibility person, I really prefer the fact that we're listening to you and not making you do anything. It's a much better user experience to not even notice that they've been personalized to you, right? And I really love the not pinching and zooming on a mobile device to see what's going on with like an infographic, right? So it's a huge win for user experience for everyone, not just people who might need accommodations. So we're at the end of the day, what we're really trying to achieve with our AI power and AI, and that's one of the reasons I'm excited to be on the show today, is that it's a bit about what's happening right now in the world, is that we have the technology and we know what's coming out, that I'm a firmly believer that pixels will be remaining in like some areas for some reasons, such as like blending and techniques like clone stamping or whatever you're doing. But I firmly believe the future is all code-based and AI and code-based, and where SVGs lie in that world and these personalized graphics that are fully accessible. We're building software right now and we're looking for beta testers, but we have an API that's going to be coming out in about 2 months, 3 months, that is going to be able to batch these SVGs, to lock in your colors. We're going to be doing a lot of really amazing things around accessibility and using AI to do these things and to really optimize them for everything you can think of.
With AI, do you see more positive right now in this space of like pushing accessibility forward? Or
I feel like we're in the wild west of AI. I mean, it's been nothing but chaos, and watching politics get involved, it's been nuts. So now, like, I heard the term AI arms race the other day. I'm like, oh my God, we might die because of AI. So I think like there's this huge positive as well, where I see all kinds of things coming out, like, oh, we're gonna fix cancer and talk to whales. And I'm like, cool. Right? So, like, I think there's just like so much going on that I think overall, what I'm excited about and what we're working on is that we think at the browser stack level, we'll come through your website, we'll find an image, we'll convert it for you, optimize it for you. We probably can't make you a dark theme, but what we can do is stick it back in and make it fully accessible for you, add an alt text for you, and fix the internet, like at a basic level. Now, we know that alt text needs to be contextual. That's a whole other conversation about what we do around our tools, but it is something where it's better than no alt text if there is a reason for it to be there. But AI is smart enough to know the context now of the information around the image. So if you train an agent to read the text first and then say, oh yeah, well, okay, we can put a decent contextual description on something that exists. It's just harder when it's new and there's just no context for the AI.
So I actually, when you were talking about right, going through and like kind of converting, right, it did tie in. I wanted to ask you earlier because you'd also mentioned SVG starting in Figma or in Illustrator. I know, right, as a graphic designer, you and I have both been in that role in the past. And it's you get a little protective when you've created something. There's nothing worse than feeling like you've handed it over to a developer and they've just maimed it in some way. So I'm curious what you kind of envision the workflow looking like here. So if I'm a web designer and I've created a Figma file and it includes SVGs that I want to be ideally fully accessible in a finished version, do you export from a Figma file? Are you looking at like a .ai or, if I talk, I'm just going to keep meandering here. How does that look like?
We have a Figma plugin that's in the works that's going to tie directly into your workflow. So you'll be in Figma, and as you know, there's accessibility design plugins that you can get right now. And many of them are great and free, but they don't do what we do. So we're making our own Figma plugin to give you not only WCAG and other like important things, but as you know, just because it's legal does not really make it a great user experience. So we are working on making it better than just legal compliance. We're talking AAA compliance. We're talking about the European Accessibility Act and making sure that these things are responding to those settings and really testing that code and making sure that what you're putting out there is going to be the most stellar user experience you could possibly have for every human on the planet.
It's ambitious.
I do.
Yeah.
And
I'm
would be
going to try to
fantastic.
change the world. Fix the internet.
Honestly, I love it because I feel like we have very similar energies. And I feel like there's a lot of people in my life that are like, hey, you should be more realistic. You should calm down. And I just want to tell you, Heather, person to person who's living up here, you're rocking it. You're killing it. Just keep slaying. Like, I think it's achievable.
I think it is too. Like, I mean, if AI can decipher and do all these things for humans, why not can it fix the freaking internet and make it accessible, right?
Well, and giving that launch point, right? Because I feel like that's the hardest part for me is like momentum, building momentum on a task. And so if you are looking at this very daunting task of make it accessible, right? If you can give the developers or the designers or the entire team a launching point, because like you said, we might not be able to do dark mode, but like we just scanned your website. We wrote the alt text. We replaced the images with better ones that you can now build on. Like that momentum is so powerful. And I don't think it needs to be 100% complete or perfect, because will we ever be 100% complete or perfect with accessibility?
Also has such legacy. Because I'm kind of I was a pixel person, pixel perfect. You know, we have all these terms around all that. Now
I know when Catherine was like, whenever your developer butchered it, I'm like, no, developers are pixel perfect. You hand them a design and it's pixel by pixel execution.
And now I'm telling you that I think pixels are going to be an archaic format in like the next 5 years alone. They're going to be I think they're going to be used again, like in Photoshop, like places where pixels make sense to move them around. But I think there's going to be a one-time click button to turn it into code, right? Like it's going to be like back and forth. There's going to be a back and forth button if you need to edit it back and forth between your SVG and your PSD, right? So I think it's going to be really interesting to watch that field. I'm just predicting that people will want better user experiences, right? First of all, over 80% of the population is like asking for dark mode, but no one's got a dark theme because it's twice as much work. And so we built this tool that allows you to easily create a smart dark mode responsive website, which is a huge step forward, because this is my favorite part of this, is that dark mode saves a lot of energy. And a lot of people don't know that it saves on average 28% energy across the board, but up to 63% of your OLED mobile device, right? Which is a lot of battery power. And most of us with great Wi-Fi and, internet don't realize that most of the world's population is on a mobile device, and they've all realized that the dark mode saves their battery. So you should be optimizing all of your experiences for a dark mode mobile device, right? And that's something where energy savings is a huge concern for everyone. The planet is literally burning, and we have to figure out a way to save ourselves from the AI, problem. And what we're using some AI, but what we're trying to do is counteract, in theory, can we make the internet streamlined and sustainable to counteract the fact that these server farms are nuts? And so part of my goal is to have a little bit of it might be just a drop in the ocean, but hey, at least I'm making an effort to change the internet, which is one of the biggest polluters in the world. I think it's something like bigger than like most countries. It's eating up enough energy, but with AI, it's going to be really unbelievable how much energy. And people don't even get me started on AI generated images, right? Okay. So the statistics are 34 million images are generated by AI today.
You're talking about like on a day,
on a daily
like up
basis.
to this. Oh, okay.
No.
64,000 images are uploaded to the internet a second, right? So at this point, the unprecedented AI generative tools that are everywhere and incorporated into your design systems and everything you do, they're free, they're easy. Even ChatGPT is launched, and they do a really great job, but it takes a little while. But what I'm noticing is that even when I'm playing around, I'm like, oh my God, as a designer, like I'm scared for designers. I'm scared for the world because it's so easy to fake things and do these videos and all this other stuff that's happening. And I'm an artist. I was an artist before I hurt my arm. And you generate these things in people's styles, and it's got some really challenging, ethical, moral. And then you realize that if you even do a chat to ChatGPT, you're using 1 to 3 bottles of water just to do a simple query. And so when you start talking about images that are always given to you over a megabyte for file sizes as a default, usually about 1.5 megabytes. And then people like make them. And then they put them on their servers and they forget about it. They don't even use them.
Well, every time you make one, you generally get back a batch, right, of 5 or 6, and you pick the one that you liked.
And then you might even keep the other ones for other days or whatever. And I just feel like the generated problem is that all of that is large files that are inherently inaccessible. Okay.
Do you think there's a future for equivalent in which you can start with an AI generated image, or you can offer a prompt
absolutely. Yeah.
and get back?
Yeah, we're working on how to, right now our plan is to launch this tool soon, which will allow any image to go through it. But the photographs are a problem because when you try to take a photograph, which actually has like, I don't know, 6,000 different colors with gradients and things. And you can imagine every pixel is a different SVG hex, right? That becomes a little bit of problematic to do in the software because you have like thousands of colors coming in, or like 900 colors are in a picture, right? So posterization of photos might be an issue to just, a solution to try to pare down the physical, information into a little bit less amount of hexes being used, so that we can optimize that. But it's not too bad. Photos actually look pretty good. You sometimes can't even tell. It's kind of more like what, they kind of look like just not quite right as high res, right? But we want to make sure that we're working on that tech, and I'm very certain that we'll get there. It's a matter of just, we're not there yet with the tech. It's coming. I definitely think it's going to be, I think it's going to be pixel for point. Mark my words. And that is really interesting to see where that goes.
So you fully foresee a future for the internet where there's no traditional images, where we're never loading a JPEG or a PNG or a...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that we might keep them some places for some reasons, for some, because they work differently for different things. I mean, a lot of it's surprising. I couldn't believe some of the Braille displays that are coming out for like tactile graphics, right? So you can feel what the image looks like. They don't accept an SVG as a file format. They only accept pixel-based bitmap images. And I was like, how on earth are you not using SVGs? Because they can use with Braille, and they're printable, they have all these scalability. Why aren't you allowing an SVG into that technology? And so SVGs are the most literally accommodating piece of code you can do. You can do anything with it. I mean, it's just amazing. So I think the future is quite bright for removing pixels altogether because they're inaccessible. They do not scale. They're just grainy and pixelated, if you will, if you blow them up or magnify them. And I magnify my content, right? Also, if you force I use a Chrome extension, for example, because no one has a dark theme. If you force that kind of stuff, you see pixelated edges and you see things. And a lot of times in that example of the MIT logo, that's on a PC with a default accessibility setting, which is used by 50% of low vision and blind users. And it blows away any if they happen to have a dark background, which they do usually choose, anything that's like a dark logo, and it's transparent PNG, guess what? You can't see it at all, right?
Whenever I was watching your demo at the beginning, I wasn't surprised at all because I'd done some testing in like high contrast mode, for example, and I left it on because I have vision issues as well. And my husband was watching over my shoulder and he was like, why are all these things broken? And like, why does it look like that? And I had forgotten, like, I was in high contrast mode because it was just easier to see. And I was like, oh, I'm sure they're just not compatible with this accessibility feature.
That's pretty much, it's correct. And one of the things that you note is that you called it high contrast theme. They're now calling it contrast themes because a lot of people like low contrast. Like, I like dark on dark. Give me some like, and I know a lot of people who will like, they hate dark stuff, so they flip it to very light with light, and it's all customizable. They can choose a text color, they can choose a background color and a link color, and it keeps it.
I know it broke my heart when you were talking about how good it is for like the global health for the dark mode, because like, dude, I'm like, the light mode, it's so harsh that it allows me to see it easier, because it's like the text. And so I'm like, oh, some people need low contrast. Okay, this is
I have photophobia with what's going on with my eyes, and that means I'm really super sensitive to light. Like, I wear sunglasses driving, and I don't actually drive. I'm sitting next to my husband driving, and as I go throughout the day, like just looking at this webinar, it's got light, right? And it's bright. I turned up my brightness factor so you could see me a little better because the illumination it's a lamp. Like,
it's giving you, yes.
Right. And so This is good for the general public to remember, but the very first monitors were black with green text because they couldn't generate enough energy to make it white, right? And so the fact that we now have these bright white lamps that people are staring at all day, this is a great example. I was flying to CSUN, an accessibility conference in Anaheim, and it was an overnight ride. And when they turned off the lights, people had laptops and tablets and things, and they had them on light mode. And they were really bright, right? And I was not only being like, ow, right? Like, it's dark in here and that's really bright and I'm trying to sleep and I hate you. But it was more like, also, did you know that would save your battery? And then I got off the plane and there was nothing but thousands of people trying to find plugs at the airport, right? And I thought, how simple would it be if airlines announced how much energy you would save, plus your neighbor could have a better sleep? It's just less blue light. It's great eye health stuff. People really prefer it. 92% of all developers are always in dark mode because they're staring at the screens all day. And if you think about it, it's like staring at a lamp. And so it's just easier on the eyes for many, many people. Now, some people hate it, and that's why it needs to be an OS level preference for your devices. Let the user choose. It's all about the success criteria 1.4.8 visual presentation to meet that AAA compliance to say, listen to their preferences. Is that so hard? So that's why we made it. It is actually really hard. And so that's why we made it easy. It's because learning WCAG and EAA is super challenging, right? There's a lot of, because people only think it's alt text, but it's color contrast. There's no text in the image. And if you link the image and all these different things, and there's like 6 major laws that apply to imagery, not just alt text, right? And so you need to do your alt text correctly. There's so much involved in just graphics. And that's why we're focusing on making tools so that people don't need to learn all that. The Figma plugin will alert you to all the issues that's going on and give you suggestions and help you and, you know, try to really make sure that what you're doing is on brand. We plan to have AI help us. So let's say, for example, you have a brand color and it's not compliant and you need to change your logo across the board, right? And you're like, screw my life. Oh my God, there's so many pixel-based images, right? And we realize that now we could generate hex-based colors within the SVG, and you could do a global find and replace of these images and the code, and it would just be a quick color change, no big deal, brand updated, WCAG compliance achieved. And so what we're working on is brand compliance as well as legal compliance. So the code is generated for you behind the scenes. And all you need to worry about is what the colors are, and we'll help you with that kind of stuff. We'll walk you through the description or to turn it decorative, right? And we force you to make sure that you add a description. Obviously, we want you to learn how to do a contextual description, and we're working on how to do that. But we're going to suggest an alt text, so there's a starting point. And then the other part is we force them to choose it, or is it decorative? You have to make the designer or whoever's in charge of that graphic think about, is it actually containing enough information to make it worth someone listening to this graphic?
Yeah. With all of your image expertise, I would love to ask if you could walk us through how you approach creating or evaluating an accessible graphic.
Okay, great question. As someone who teaches accessible graphics, so I have an entire slideshow I could walk through. I don't know how much time we have. But,
I don't either, but I need the info, man. I
can just do a quick screen share, but it's more about talking about, as designers, you got to shift everything left, which means bring it back to the very beginning, right? Like where you create stuff.
Yeah, can we break that down? Because another speaker said that term, and I felt very out of the loop. Is this a term everyone knows? Like, why? Is this talking about like the left to right, right to left with like different?
It's shifting left, like bringing it to the beginning of the design and development process.
You're looking at a timeline of start to finish. Usually, it goes in Western world right now.
I am seeing now. Okay,
and it goes to right.
It has nothing to do with the order in which we read text. It's
no. You're thinking about like a. Yeah, I mean, I guess it has to do with the order in which we read text. In that most of the time when we're making a timeline, we're thinking of starting at the left.
Okay. Now, I'm sure other places might think otherwise, but here in the United States, we go left. Right.
I got you. Okay, sorry for interrupting. Okay, so now I understand. You go from we shift left
means get to the very beginning, like where the statistic is something like 67% of all accessibility issues start in the design phase, right? So that is where you have to begin if you want to make an accessible SVG. Don't screw up your color contrast, choose accessible colors, make sure you're thinking about not crappy fonts, like really think about making the design itself fully accessible. That's the first part of making something, a graphic, accessible. That's really crucial to know line height, and try not to put text in your graphics, please. That's one of the bad laws, right? So there's a lot of things there's a lot of education, and it's very overwhelming, since why we're making our SaaS so that you guys software so you guys can use it. But there is a lot to learn. And so, educating yourself first off is really important on what is the legal compliance, what are those rules, bookmark them, look over them. You learn them, so you can recognize stuff. Once you know them, you can't not see all of the issues everywhere you go. In physical spaces, in digital spaces, all you see is the low contrast or the, pixelated, whatever it is, and you can tell there's no alt text or whatever it is. You just see it all the time once you know the rules. And once you know the rules, you become an accessibility designer, and you're an accessible designer. And that is the key for success for the next couple steps. And the next couple steps is probably using our software, because actually getting into the dev and engineering gets really complicated. But I do have an advanced graphic. If we have time, I'd love to share you what my co-founder and husband, Paul Neff, did.
Yeah.
It is literally the most accessible and sustainable graphic ever made.
Let's see. I was looking. Did you already share the screen or not?
No,
yet?
I was going
Okay.
to. I just wanted to.
Yeah, let me know when it's up, and I will.
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna open up my. Oh, I had it up. I guess.
And then let's go ahead and we're gonna highlight, in case we lose captions, because I think we will when we screen share this. Here is the website. captionpros.onecapapp.com.
It's just me talking with screenshot. There's no captions. It's just me talking. So.
Yeah, no. We're saying our captioning software. We are having trouble showing
when we
captions.
Okay.
Yeah, when we share your
not
screen,
you.
we will lose our captions. So if anyone is depending on the captions to watch, they need to head to this link while we're screen sharing. So
they're still available. So.
All right. So I am now screen sharing. So hopefully
okay.
I'll try to also talk slowly so that the AI can keep up.
It's a real person.
Oh, really? Awesome. Wow. You guys are doing great. That's even better. Always human oversight is number one, right? So thank you.
Yeah. No, this is Tracy. She's been captioning for us all day.
Tracy is slaying it.
Must be tired from all the very fast talkers. So I appreciate human oversight, and it's really important to have humans and disabled user testing all the time. Okay, so what you're seeing on screen is our website. I put it in dark mode, but the image itself went on a website that did not have a dark theme. So the image did not change back and forth with this toggle. You'd see that it would have normally flipped into a dark mode. But again, the website what was going on did not have a dark theme. Now, this was in partnership with Atos, who's sponsored fellowship, our company is a fellowship. We just went to the United Nations to pitch at the Zero Project. It was really exciting. And we've been working with Atos all last year in 2024. And they had this amazing partnership with the Olympic and Paralympic Games. And we wound up working on the most accessible SVG possible. But they're also the global leader in digital decarbonization. Now, most people probably don't know Atos, but they're the largest company in France. And they do all kinds of IT and computers. And they're really into digital decarbonization. And so when I met Neil Milliken, the global head of accessibility there, he couldn't believe how small we could get these file sizes. Now, a lot of the small file sizes right now are done by hand because you need to clean up the artwork, which the tool can't do that for you, right? Because if you don't know what you're doing in Vector, then that becomes an issue. But since we do know what we're doing with Vector, we cleaned up these logos. And right now I wanted to walk you through how cool this image is that first off, it has live selectable text, both in these little boxes and below the boxes. And so this is all 2 different fonts that are on brand and declared into the CSS and in the background so they would load properly. The whole thing has 15 logos. It's a 30-year history. We were given a PowerPoint presentation it was about and we turned it into a JPEG. It was kind of like also some JPEGs were given to us or PNGs or something. And it was about a 1 megabyte file. And it was probably maybe 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels. And so we redesigned it to be this amazing vector format so that it would be converting this. This was actually a PNG embedded in the file, and we converted that to vector and kept the appearance to look exactly like it. And optimize the entire thing. So this entire file is 61 kilobytes, even though it's one file with 15 SVGs within an SVG. And the next thing that we did is using CSS transformation. When I say we, my husband, is that as you turn it into mobile, it rearranges itself using CSS transformations to use the same elements and just rearranging them, right? So now on the mobile device, you don't have to pinch and zoom, but again, it's loading fast and doing its thing. It also has our patent pending IP, which is this kind of contrast themes, responsive behavior. I do have I'm on a Mac, so I have this kind of fakeroo stuff, but you'll see that it can change responsive to the whatever the commands are, which is kind of a cool functionality of showing you what it can do if you are using contrast themes on a PC. And that is kind of what led us to do this other WCAG report that you guys can't see. I don't think so. I'm sharing the wrong screen, but let me walk you through what we actually did with this file. Was that because it's like a web page, but it's not a web page, we were working on making sure that we met the web content accessibility guidelines, or WCAG, for web pages within the XML. Right. So here we have this one SVG with embedded SVGs, but it has semantic, stuff for screen readers. And it also had, which is really cool, tab stops for a screen reader so that a user could navigate around inside this. It also had a custom reading order. So a blind person would hear a completely different experience that was customly made to fill in the blanks and to make this sound amazing to their ears. Then we translated this into German, and then we translated this into French, and the reading orders into German and French. And then, AI started catching up with everything, and I got really excited because now that it's got real actual text inside, that opens us up to translate this graphic into 7,100 languages, which are then easily translated by AI, right? So it's really kind of exciting to talk about how what we're doing with this type of graphic is very much like a web page, but it's still an image, right? So we're trying to cross over, how can we make the most accessible graphics? There's a lot of R&D behind this, and lots of technical research and lots of optimization of the code, and really making this, again, this is a 61 kilobyte SVG, right? And 15 logos that are quite complex, and all this other stuff involved. So I'm really proud of the work that we've done. I'm stop sharing so you can put us back on screen. Because of the fact that it is so hard to do this, that's where our tool is going to be heading. We know that we can't do that quite right now with CS transformations. How do you do that in code, like with engineering? It's very difficult to think like an engineer and then have a tool do what an engineer would do. So if anyone's listening who wants to hire my husband, he does this custom engineering stuff and is looking for work, because a lot of people don't know you can do this with SVGs, right? But if you can imagine how amazing the customer experience would be, or the user experience would be interacting with your website, amazing fast load times, amazing user experience, customization, full accessibility, screen reader compatibility, WCAG compliance, AAA compliance. We're talking about the most amazing graphics you can possibly engineer, right? Yeah. So that's where we're heading, is that we would like to build our tools that we're working on and to be able to create that for you as well.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. This was so powerful, and I just appreciate you so much. Do you have a link that you want I can put in the chat?
Oh, that's a good one.
A resource, something I can share with the world.
So the website is www.equivalentsvg for scalable vector graphic. For anyone who doesn't know what a scalable vector graphic is the vector format, which means it's a math-based on a grid coordinate that's being generated by a program like Adobe Illustrator or Figma. And the other URLs I would probably, you can also sign up for our mailing list to know when we're launching the Figma plugin and the API. We are looking for API beta testers. So if you guys are interested in trying this out, you can also go over to our website for a free 2-week trial, no credit card. Go play with the tool, give us some feedback. It's just an MVP. And we'd love to find out if there's anything wrong with it, of course. And we know there's a million things that we're fixing right now because it was just kind of a proof of concept. And then the other thing I wanted to just say is thank you guys, and it was an honor to be here today. So
seriously, your story was so powerful, and what you're building is really cool for pushing accessibility forward. So thank you for sharing. It was an honor having you.
Thanks, Catherine. It was nice to see you guys.
Yep.
Alrighty. Are we ready? So we have one last guest for today.
Last but not least.
Yeah. No, not least by any means. I'm just like so humbled by our lineup. It's such the beautiful stories, the advice that's been shared. It's been really, really cool. But our next guest, are we ready? Are we ready to?
You're ready. I'm going to bring you on, Kathleen.
All right, Kathleen McMahon. Hi. Kathleen is an accessibility advocate and engineer at Electronic Arts and a frequent speaker on inclusive design, developer culture, and importance of building with community in mind. Kathleen, did I miss anything on your intro? Anything that you want to highlight for the community to know about yourself?
I think you got it all.
Okay, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for joining us again. It's always fun to have repeat guests back on. That's so weird.
Pleasure. Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Oh my goodness. So Kathleen, tell us a little bit about, like, it doesn't have to be whole story, but if you want whole story, I'm totally fine with that. But just a little bit about how you got started in the work that you do and where you're specifically working towards pushing accessibility forward.
How I got started, very long history as design developer / designer, and with the older tools and the newer tools, and then I happened upon some girl development courses before they became problematic, before I learned how problematic they are, and took some courses on leveling up some of my coding skills. And one of the teachers, a colleague, Marcy Sutton, you may have heard of her, was talking about accessibility, and she would tweet a lot about it. And when I learned more about, accessibility, how to solve things and make things accessible and, and available to everyone, I'm like, that is something I can dig into. I love it because it's something that is very important to me. It's equal access is just something that is near and dear to my heart. So
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
We throw around these buzzwords a lot in design and development, but like, what does inclusive by design mean to you specifically, especially in the context of like developer workflows?
Inclusive. Well, right now I'm in the happy place where I'm doing both design and development, which is amazing. So inclusive by design is making sure that you are thinking about accessibility and inclusion, because they are separate things. You could have something that it's technically accessible but still not inclusive. Thinking about it in every step of the process, like how are your designs being designed? Are you considering your color contrast? Are you thinking about the semantics under the hood? Do you understand how a design is coded under the hood? Are you partnering with, as a designer, are you partnering with developers rather than doing the hand it over? Are you partnering versus just throwing something over the wall and expecting something to be just coded? So thinking about partnering with developers on how things can be accomplished early in the process while you're making your designs, thinking about contrast, thinking about, will this be operable by a keyboard? Have you considered, for example, we were talking about this earlier today, are you adding a back button in your UI? If you are doing a whole flow, are you allowing the user to go backwards in your flow? Or are you saying, no, we want them to go forwards? Like, you do know that there is a back button literally in the browser that you cannot disable. So, it's important to consider giving the user the choice to control and access your apps in the way that makes sense for them. So that's in terms of design and development, making sure that you are, developing, creating components, thinking about the accessibility support right out of the gate. Are you building your API that will support the properties? Are you documenting how these properties, are going to be used if you're thinking of using a design system, for example?
Yeah.
Are you educating people on how to, use these properties? Because you could add all these attributes in there, but if someone doesn't know how to use them properly, they could take an accessible component and implement it in an inaccessible way. So it's thinking about it all the time, bringing it up in meetings the right way, and testing with users with disabilities.
Wait, you say there's a wrong way to bring something up in a meeting?
Because you said asking for a friend.
Yeah, not like personally. I just,
something about, the honey versus vinegar approach, or, there's a delicate balance where you have to find a way to advocate without turning people off, and know when to choose the battle. Otherwise, your personal mental health will suffer if you're advocating and no one's listening. So it's a way of like, how do you make it so you're adding it in, or how do you subtly add it into the process where it's already accessible and people just don't know, or and how do you educate that this should be part of always the process versus and now we'll handle accessibility. It's like, well, no, it's not a yes and then. It's, as it's just like when you cook, you clean as you go. Well, ideally, or
I feel so called out.
Yeah.
Same. It's like, if I could do cooking like I did with my design and development work, then everything would be better, have a clean counter. But
I actually wanted to jump back to something you said earlier, and you were talking about you were like, it should be accessible and inclusive, which are not necessarily the same. And I think I wanted to call that out specifically because I think it's something that's so important, and I think it's not necessarily quite as common knowledge as it would be nice if it was. So let's dig into that just a little bit more. If you could talk a little bit about the difference between building something that's accessible and building something that's inclusive, and where there is overlap in that Venn diagram and where there may not be.
Okay. So when you build something that is accessible, a lot of people look at web content accessibility guidelines, which I pronounce WCAG, not WCAG, but WCAG is, so in the WCAG guidelines, you have a success criteria. It must be, perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust, right? Blah, blah, blah. And it has these criterions, success criterions of, if you do this, this will pass the criteria. Okay, but that is setting the absolute minimum bar to surpass. The absolute minimum you need to do to make something technically accessible. Someone did this really great article where they purposely built a site that would pass the Google's Lighthouse accessibility checker, and it would get a 100% accessibility score, but it was actually an inaccessible site because the person understood accessibility enough that they knew how to build something in a way that you could kind of like technically pass, but it really wasn't a usable site. So by going straight by a metric of checkboxes does not necessarily mean something is accessible. If you are combining the patterns in the wrong way, if you are not testing with users, because you might have something that's technically accessible, but if you are not testing, again, with users with disabilities, you are not getting the feedback on this may be technically accessible, but it's not including this group or that group. It's excluding a certain group inadvertently. Did I answer all of that?
No,
Yeah.
Beautifully. And
Okay.
I just was like, wow, she should never stop talking. There's so many good pull quotes here. Sorry, I was just daydreaming about all the pull quotes I was going to make for Twitter for you. Anyways, because you just say such very to the point things. So I very appreciate your opinions so far. I wanted to ask you, I had a question about just, You've spoken before about the importance of accessibility not being a checklist. And I just wanted to ask, what does that mindset shift actually look like in practice? Because like just practically, like how can it not be a checklist? Like how can accessibility be something that we're like living and breathing more?
I feel like there needs to be a lot more empathy building. Before, for people to understand that it's more than a checklist. It's there's an educational component where if you can demonstrate how you can make something, it's like, this is how we can fool Lighthouse, or this is how we can if you can demonstrate to someone and they can see that aha moment of, oh, wait, now I get what you're saying, they will start integrating that accessibility mindset and inclusive mindset earlier in the process. If you somehow find a way to show that the time savings of building something at the beginning versus having to retrofit something at the end, because sometimes you really have to go for the money bottom line. Unfortunately, like I mean, look right now with everyone getting laid off, and then all of a sudden they're like releasing the same jobs at probably a lower rate. Did I say that? I did say that, but yeah, I will manage those feelings a little bit better. If you can show how something is working and how it actually can affect your bottom line, if you have to speak, you have to target what that person's going to hear. Sometimes you have to listen to, what is this person, what do I have to say to get them to really get it? And even if it is about money, and even if it is about avoiding a lawsuit, hopefully over time they'll understand that, well, yeah, it is that, but we really should be doing, this all the time.
It's always so cool to me when we have guests on that haven't necessarily spoken to each other that repeat the same kind of core principles. Where it's
I'm very tempted to be like, did you all have a pre-meeting without me?
No, I'm joking. Our very first set of guests actually were talking very similarly about, how to frame feedback and kind of trying to strike that spot between like, well, if you just come back and you say, here's everything that's wrong, what were you thinking? Right. That it automatically sets people on the defensive, which is such a normal human reaction. All of us would do that. If you came to me and you were like, what are you even doing with this stream? Right? Like my handles would be up, before you even have a chance to consciously think about it, your gut reaction is, ugh, and your shoulders go up and you move into defensive posture. Right. And I think it's so easy, especially with some of the tech stuff, right? A lot of us get so used to just being like, well, this is right or wrong, and you get to point to a set of standards, or you're doing some kind of code review and you just get to leave a list of like, this doesn't work, that doesn't work, we should be doing this isn't efficient. But that is not necessarily an effective way to communicate. We just kind of get in our silos sometimes, I think. And it's a good reminder. I like, you were talking earlier about, more flies with honey than vinegar. It's like, yeah, a lot of this is about human relations as much or possibly even more than it is necessarily about technology.
Yes. And it's hard when you advocate for it because when you see, like when you hear feedback, when you're like, what do you think about, can we do this? We need to, it'd be nice to, include these type of users. And you get, well, how many users of, how many low vision users do we have anyway? How many of this do we have? And, it's like, I really wish I had a list of alternative things to come back with that are not accessibility based, but, it's like, how many mouse users do we have anyway? Right? Like if we make it only keyboard accessible, like, not that it can happen. It's like, I mean, how many users have this Apple Magic Mouse?
Yeah. Right? Oh, you got muted,
How?
Kathleen.
How did this happen? Hang on, I'm going to unmute her. Wait, I don't have the access.
Kathleen,
Kathleen,
you accidentally muted yourself.
I muted myself in my rant. Okay, so
It looked like a really good rant, though.
it was a really good rant.
I want to rewind.
So, how many users anyway would really use a mouse? Let me present. Please enjoy this Apple
this mouse.
Right?
I'll even tell you.
And please enjoy
Not me.
the depth of that. Also, please enjoy the power port that is on the back.
Oh, God,
Oh, you have no idea how many times I've gotten to go on a live stream and it was like dead. And I'm like, I cannot mouse now and charge. I have no mouse charge capability. I just have no mouse. So I get to keyboard the whole stream.
That it's like having something to pull out when someone's like, oh, how many low vision users do we have? Or how many colorblind users do we have?
Right.
Well, and there's also some truth that if you haven't built something that's accessible to those people, you don't have them, and it becomes a loop, right? Like, yeah, of course you don't have, viewers that are colorblind because you haven't created something that they can access. And if you made it so that your product was colorblind friendly, you might find suddenly that you have a larger percentage of colorblind users because suddenly they're able to access what you built. So
and that's more of your customer base, and your customer base has increased. And what does that affect? Your bottom line.
Oh yeah, the chat is saying that is such a good point about metrics. So I love that.
Yeah, when you're standing in a building that's only accessible through stairs, and then you ask how many wheelchair users are in the room, not many right now.
I'm seeing the chat right now. There's a comment I have to say, and I'm not gonna join the chat.
Which one?
Mouse got mad and muted.
Yeah.
Yes. True.
You were calling out the mouse on camera, and you didn't.
The mouse was like,
"How dare you? I'm gonna mute you."
No, with the flies with honey and how we were talking about, it's more of like a peopling skill with this advocacy for accessibility than anything else. I do want to say, because there's been a lot of caution with AI usage with accessibility initiatives, that I have found great success in writing what I feel like I need to say, like, because I'm not a good communicator, I like bullets and straightforwardness, and then I'll give it to AI and AI will be like, hey, so that's a lot of harsh feedback. Maybe we soften it up with like saying hey and not just sending him a straight bullet list first. Like it gives me pointers on how I can learn how to people better, right? And so that my feedback goes further and that the initiative actually moves forward versus me just shutting people down. And so I feel like there are unique ways that we could use AI to push accessibility.
Making an I'm not sure I agree face.
Really. I do agree in certain ways. I'm thinking of how an LLM can really help someone that is neurodivergent and perhaps can be captain literal. And, can be, like you were saying, Alyssa, straight to the point. You need to A, B, C, D, E, and perhaps you're a person that may have gotten feedback over time of, maybe you should put emojis in your...
I know. I'm literally learning from AI how to, I hate to say be less neurodivergent, but how to communicate better so that my voice is heard, because I feel like I was just, shutting myself down almost. But
it affects not just, like, there's neurodivergence, but there's also a gender construct here that's also happening,
Catherine calls that out all the time because she's like, I either use Catherine or I use AI, and I'm like, here's what I want to say, and Catherine is always like, well, that's not bold enough, and and then I'm like, really, because it feels really bold to me. So Catherine will often talk about the differences with gender and how women need to speak more forcefully. Is that more to the point of like?
More. It's just a difference in what I think is expected and what gets categorized as mean for women versus assertive or bold or
assertive. Sometimes, often can mean for women. Assertive means aggressive. And
Right.
aggressive is also a no-no for anyone. Will not just like underrepresented, but even like for marginalized. Do not say that. Passion.
Yeah. But I think it's actually interesting.
Like finding a way to temper your passion. In a way, deliver your passion in a way that is palatable. How do you do that? It's like, this is what I wanted to say. How do I say it in a palatable way rather than saying soften? Because soften is like, how soft? It's like, you want a palatable delivery. LLMs are great when they can learn your way of talking. You know, so rather than just saying, write this for me, it's like, you write what you want to write, Alyssa. And say, this is what I want to deliver. Okay, help me out. Cool. You can massage it, and then go, okay, now can you make sure you say it in the way I speak? And it will bring it back to your words, which is great. It's not just like splitting out something like that's just been scraped from the web. It's actually learning how you communicate, learning how you talk, and blending how you talk and communicate with, you know, some extra words or phrasings that may help deliver the message.
Well, and I think even more powerfully, and teaching me how to do it myself. Because I think that's something, it's like when I was using a self-driving car for the first time, and I was like, oh, that's what a smooth lane change feels like. Like it would change the lanes, and it wasn't rough. Like it was smooth. But it was like showing me, because it was moving the wheel for me. And that's what it feels like when I pair code with AI, or whenever I'm like, oh, okay, I could try that in my own life. You know, I could be smoother in my transitions.
I think it's interesting. Actually, I feel like it hooks into something that Dr. Yuta was talking about earlier, where she was saying that, right, a lot of what AI is giving back to us is based on the majority or the default or the kind of, right, when you've got this huge pool of data, what you're getting back is the average. And sometimes that works really well. I think this is actually a case where that is kind of beneficial when you're saying, how can I say this in a way that's going to be most palatable to a huge group of people? Or how can I take something that feels to me outside the norm and I want to actively attempt to normalize it, heavy quotes on that. And that sounds to me kind of like what you're doing there. Is like, I feel like I said something that was way out here and I want to kind of bring it down into the scope of what feels average for workplace communications. And it's helping you with that because it's really good at bringing things into the average. That's arguably what it does best. And then it might struggle the other way around. You know, when you're saying this is a person or, you know, an experience that lives outside of the average, and I need you to meet me here. And it can't quite do that yet.
and using LLMs to help, like code pairing, you know, code pilot, whatever, you know, anything, you know, whatever models you want to choose, they can be good to a point. You do really have to know what you're doing, because I went to React Miami, and one of the speakers, she was talking about AI, and she had the slide, and I took a photo of it. It was so great. It was, and I'm going to say, LLMs weren't trained on good code. They were trained on your code. So basically, right? It's pulling, it's the LLMs, depending on which models they're pulling from, right? Are they pulling from your proprietary code? Are they pulling from, you know, open source code? They, like you were saying, they're taking the average, they're taking this and that. Are they putting in best practices, or are they, you know, just shoving in, you know, like your secrets right into the code? And if you don't know better, you're like, oh, ship it. It's like, you're the next person that's going to get your pink slip. But it's like knowing like where you're like, no, I need you to help me like learn this, or help me like restructure this code. And one thing that I do like about pairing with an LLM, you know, and just with AI for coding, is saying, that's not what I'm, you know, trying to accomplish. I need to think of these edge cases, and it teaches you how to communicate better what you're asking for. It's like, rather than say, generate this, it's like, you could say generate a web page, and you might get it spit out like some, you know, the most recent Figma conference where it's like, okay, we have Figma sites, but everything was, did you see all the divs? Everything was spit out as divs. And it's like, how do you know, you know, it's like, if you don't know any better, you're like, oh, this is great. It's like, not necessarily. It's like, you have to understand, like, can you, like,
should have asked Heather about Figma Draw.
Did they say, I want you to design the site and use semantic semantic elements and make sure that it would pass an accessibility audit and everything else.
Mhm.
And even with those agents that are scanning your code for accessibility violations, again, automated tools only capture a certain percentage.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You have to have that human that understands the nuance, understands that if you have, for example, a background color and it's semi-transparent, it's going to say, hey, this is not accessible, you know, because of like this hex code. But it's like, actually, no, it was like this other thing, you know, like there was a semi-transparency on this element, or you are trying to check something against a gradient background and the tools don't know how to do that yet. You still have to have the human that understands the nuance and the context to say, this is an issue, or this is a separate issue than what you're calling out.
Yeah, Catherine and I very much are united with you on this stance. We are trying to internally push the vibe of you should not write it with AI, whether it's code, content, whatever, if you cannot write it without AI. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't use AI to learn, right? Like, and learn that thing, right? And then become educated enough to write that thing. And so I stand what you're saying, Kathleen. That's good stuff.
It's a tool like anything else, right? Once you have a hammer, that doesn't make everything a nail, but it's great at hammering. Like,
good fun hammering.
It's good for, I think, when I was seeing like I was looking at some of like Brad Frost's, you know, he had an article about AI and design systems. One of the things I really liked about it was he was talking about documentation. Yes, it can be very powerful for documenting your components, for example. And what's even better about that is say you have, you know, say you have a content team or a team that really understands your documentation, says, we want to use this particular voice and tone through all our, you know, component documentation. If you're not strong at figuring out that type of grammar structure, you could say, I want to create, you know, a component documentation that has a do's and don't, but please make sure you're using active voice versus passive voice, you know, and you can have like a voice and tone style that you can base, you know, your components off of, and then create consistency.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Or even check you, right? Say, I want this to be in active voice and I want it to communicate XYZ. Sometimes I'll do that when I've written something. I'll say, read this and tell me what you think the main takeaway was. And sometimes I find that I wasn't communicating it as well as I had hoped that I
love
was.
that. That's
I feel very humbled. I would say 90% of the time I didn't realize I wasn't communicating the thing I thought I was. So
I mean, it's just a mushy.
Yeah, we're like, some words still in my brain. Did they not come out of my mouth? Very possible.
I thought it was crystal clear.
In my brain. Oh, okay. I have one last question to wrap, and then I'll ask if you have any resources, Kathleen. This has been so fun, though. Thank you again. So my last question I wanted to ask you is, if a developer or designer watching this stream wanted to start shifting the accessibility mindset at their organization, what would you tell them to try first?
I would try to sneak it in to my designs or development. No, seriously, I would sneak it in and say, hey, and I did this thing, you know, and by the way, I pop the colors here, because it supports this, and showing that it's already done. And because you already have it, you're showing it, you're demonstrating it, versus, hey, I'd like to do this. And someone's like, no, we don't have time. It's like, it's already done. And they're like, oh, this is cool. We should do this more often.
Great. Yes, we should. Yeah.
I actually have a real life example of my husband. We're both in the dev world, and he just did this, but it can backfire on you because now they're like, oh, well, you should be leading this initiative. And so here is all of it. Like, do it everywhere, right? Like, so just a fair warning, like just prepare for all the hats that can come with such a move.
Added to all the meetings. Yes.
No, I think that's great. Alyssa knows I'm a big ask forgiveness, not permission kind of person.
Yeah, that's why we're both so dangerous together. It's like our life motto.
We just encourage each other back and forth forever.
Oh, Kathleen, my goodness, you are amazing. I am so honored that you
my ego right now.
Time to come on. Do you have any points that you wanted to make that I did not get to in the questions, or any resources you'd like to share?
resources, I would definitely go for accessibility project. And I know, I am definitely looking at that Heather Neff's and her husband's tool, the equivalent, Smart Graphics now. I know that the Stark color contrast, like getstark.co, I believe. Stark. They had a website, not in addition to the accessibility project. They had is it their resources section?
Ooh.
I believe, unless it's changed, I'll accept all the cookies because it's Stark. You can see.
You said getstark.co?
Getstark.co.
This is the simple WCAG that you're.
It's their library. Look at their library. Yes, new in the library. You can see collections, categories, categories of blogs and articles, books. They have been collecting.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Media. And so in there, I'm sure they would have, I'm sure they would have a website. They probably have accessibility project in there. But they have the tools and the resources and podcasts. And so they've been collecting all this information. So it's something that I forgot that it's there, but it's amazing that you can see all this. And I'm like, design systems wide. If you're into that, it would be Stu Robson's design system. Design token.
These are amazing. And these are off the top of your head? That's amazing.
Stu Robson's awesome design tokens. So there is like a bunch of repositories about design tokens, and Stu is amazing about curating articles. Stu, I think he's available for work right now, so he's been looking for work. He's a freelancer. He's really good, and he curates all these articles. And when I saw him at Design Systems London in 2019, he would watch all the talks and give a summary for each of the talks. So he's really good about summarizing. Also, I think he has a newsletter. So he's fantastic. So.
Thank you. These are great. They're in the chat, and I'm going to make sure they make it to the description of the posted recording later. But this was amazing. Thank you so much, Kathleen.
Thank you for inviting me. This is awesome to be part of this group.
It's always a blast to have you on.
Always, yes. I hope is it daytime where you are? Are you in the daytime zone?
It is 1 Eastern.
Okay. I hope your
Same time
afternoon is beautiful. Oh, thank you so much for coming on. We will see you on the next one because I'm for sure inviting you on our next stream. Bye, Kathleen.
See you later.
Oh my goodness. So I do want to do a big shout out. Thank you for all of our guests who came on, everyone who did the amazing comments in the chat, kept chat going. But also Captions, I want to get their company right. Caption Pros, specifically Casey and Tracy from Caption Pros, who made the captioning possible today. Thank you for all the hard work and just helping us get this done. So I think that's all I have. Catherine, you got any sign off that you'd like to?
I can't think of anything better than that. I feel very lucky to have been able to talk with all these brilliant folks today.
Me too.
So.
Happy Global Accessibility Awareness Day, everyone.
Yeah. See you guys around.
See you later. Bye.